Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this Top Split Road to Pro broadcasted to you live on Podium Esports. The eNASCAR Road to Pro qualifying series has been hot so far, but we'll see how much the tempers flare at America's favorite short track. Martinsville Speedway is incredibly difficult, but here up in the booth calling all the action is James Pike, Evan Pasoko, Joshua Lee, myself, Jeff McConey, and Ryan Bauer behind the scenes, and down in the pits, Taylor Burris. We've got an exciting night of racing coming up. I'm going to toss it over to Evan, though, who can start off with a good idea of how things have been going so far.
Well, it's going to be an exciting night, guys. We're getting ready for the second to last race of this opening round, right? And just last time out, Cody Bias became the fifth different race winner in the 6 weeks on this championship. So it continues to show how strong the competition is, not only in this top split level, but throughout the first couple of top splits as we get that much closer to that top 70 cutoff. But it's an interesting battle here tonight, specifically because we're headed to Martinsville, Josh, and it's a very tricky track. This is a race that could get a little bit messy, and with so many drivers, I think seeing that finish line within sight, it could be a critical second to last race of this opening round.
It is such a perfect storm of storylines tonight. We're going short track racing at one of the most famous short tracks in the world. We're expecting a lot of bumping and banging, and there's a lot of drivers trying to do that last minute Hail Mary pass to get into the top 70. There's a lot of big names outside of the top 70. Jordan Worth is outside of the top 70 right now, along with a handful of others that are trying to get above that cut line before the cutoff after Dover in 2 weeks' time. Martinsville's not exactly the place you want to try and make a Hail Mary, but there's a lot of drivers that need to do it tonight. Their hopes of competing in the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing series are going to go bye-bye in 2 weeks.
Should be very entertaining to see how it all pans out. But to learn a little bit more about this Martinsville Speedway, let's go back to our crew chief atop the virtual pit box, Jeff McConey, to tell us all about Martinsville.
Martinsville Speedway is in Ridgeway, Virginia. Cameras here courtesy of Google Earth. You'll see a nice train chugging on by here, but the main focus is the half mile here. Opened in 1947. 12 degrees banking in the turns technically, but it's hard to feel that when you're behind the wheel. It's flat, it's fast around this 0.526 mile track. The fastest lap ever was an 18.476 by Greg Sachs in the NASCAR Wheel and Modified Tour back in 1986. The Modifieds coming back here shortly as well. Turns 1 and 2, 3 and 4. Like we said, a little bit of banking on them, but for all intents and purposes, they're pretty flat around here. Only 12 degrees of banking.
A little bit on the racetrack. Now, so far as strategy goes, Jeff, we know you're the man when it comes to piecing together how drivers are going to navigate these 200 laps this evening. So tell us more about your preferred strategy and what drivers should expect on that front.
Well, you have 5 sets of tires to play with, but unless we have green flag runs here, you're probably going to be using all of them here. However, you can get away with old tires on this track. It's not as terrible of a fall off here, and that mostly comes down to you have to make passes on the inside unless you have a crazy run on the outside or the guy on the inside makes a mistake. All your passes are going to be coming on the inside line. So if my tires aren't 30, 40 laps old, I'm probably going to stay out on a caution. Now, that'll change. It depends on the strategy of the race and everything. But if it stays green here, you can make it about 125 to 130 laps on fuel. So if we're looking at a green flag race here and it's looking like it's going to go by quickly, pit at lap 100, split this race in 2, and get ready to go to the end, because Martinsville, this is a driver's track. The truck will not respond well to adjustments here on the pit stops. They tend to pretty much be what you unload with. You can take swings at them, but it's going to have to be a big swing to make a huge difference. The best thing you can do is if you're behind the wheel, you're playing with that brake bias, bumping it up, turning it back down. Other than that, the truck doesn't tend to respond too well to adjustments here.
I think one of the most interesting things about this place, Evan, is that you look at especially the last 20 years, and the drivers who tend to do well here are the ones who manage the torque best, which means that some of the road course ringers, you think of like a AJ Allmendinger when he was running the Cup Series, usually tended to run pretty well here at Martinsville. And that's because you use that same sort of skill set of throttle application, getting back on and rolling back into the throttle. You can't just mat the gas on corner exit here at Martinsville. You will spin your truck out. This is more about rolling in and rolling into the brake and managing both of those, because we know rear tire wear and brake life, especially the front end of these trucks, is so important.
Yeah, when you were talking about the torque, the first thing that jumped into my head is the road course guys, right? Especially with today's version of much of this racing, where I think that art of playing with the throttle, to getting, using the throttle essentially to help turn the race car, being disciplined as you try to work back to 100% throttle, as that's an art that has died off just a little bit. You're exactly right. The very short tracks like this, I mean, Martinsville, that's what makes this track different than even the likes of Richmond, right? Some of the other short tracks that we've been to is you really do have to play with that right foot, where this race is going to be won and lost. And Jeff mentioned, well, yes, tires aren't the sole purpose tonight, the sole concern. I think that is going to be what dictates who's going to be fast around here. Now, there is that other element to Martinsville where there is the elegance to it, right? Where if you can figure out how to get that truck to move around here elegantly, cleanly, you're not over applying the throttle, you're not mashing on the brakes too hard, you're going to be fast. There is also that element of chaos here at Martinsville, and I think it's a fun blend as we get set to go racing here tonight. And just back to the point that I made right off at the top, tonight is such a critical race. So we'll see how these drivers who may be above the cut line, are they going to be a little bit more conservative? Do they want to maybe defend points wise here tonight? What if you're a driver below the top 70 cutoff, right? How aggressive will you be? We may see drivers attack this race differently than they would have in the first half, not only because it's Martinsville, but because it's the second last race of this round.
And Josh, it's a point that I know you've made over plenty of these Road to Pro qualifying iRacing series broadcasts, but again, 2 races to go, including this one, until we cut and only take the top 70 forward into the summer to find out who's going to make it into the Contender Series. And you look right around the bubble, that 70th spot in points, and there are plenty of people in this top split that are fighting for any sort of opportunity whatsoever, whether or not it's to hang on to a place in the top 70 or break their way in the very last few races.
We talk about being close to 70th, talking about drivers on the bubble that are in. Logan Helton, Michael Finlayson. Helton currently 64th, Finlayson currently 67th. Drivers closely outside of the top 70. Justin Levine at 76, 42 off. Brandon Cattell, 78th, 53 off. Jordan Wirth, 79, 61 off. You go down the list, Adam Gilliland, Carson Osavar, Kevin King, Drew Farinarsh, all outside of the cut line. They need good races here tonight at Martinsville and at Dover if they want a chance of being in that top 70, and they need to hope that a couple of the top 70 drivers that think they're comfortable have bad days this week and in 2 weeks time, so they can try and take those spots away, because right now the top 70 is the best that we have at the moment. We only need drivers that are going to be the best now and be good when it counts.
Qualifying is done. Time to go racing in the eNASCAR Road to Pro qualifying iRacing series from the Paperclip Martinsville Speedway. And we just talked about Michael Finlayson and how close to the bubble he is. Couldn't put yourself in a better position by taking pole at Martinsville with a 19.617 second lap alongside Dylan Alt. Donovan Strauss has been strong in these first few races of the Road to Pro qualifying iRacing series. Braden Boulos has had speed, Derek Bordeaux, and Seth the Merchant Evan off that Logitech Gialta's esports stable, starting on the outside of row 3.
And you continue on down through with the likes of Parker Retzlaff and Jordy Lopez Jr. on row number 4. And then Cody Bias and Michael Cozy Jr. will be through the top 10. Brian LaPrade to the inside of row 6 and 11 spot. And Brandon McKissick will start from P12.
Anthony Burrs in the Walter Mobile starts on the inside of row 7. Jeremy Allen is outside. We just mentioned Jordan Wirth outside of that cut line needs a good night here. He's right next to Brian Mercurio on row 8. And rounding your top 18, Santiago Tier to the inside, Casey Tucker on the outside line.
Row number 10 is Garrison Hogan. Landon Huffman now up in the top split. His first time 2 weeks ago, his second time tonight will be on the outside of row 10. Row 11, Tucker Minter, Liam Brotherton. And row 12 is Matt Danson and Drew Farinash.
Michael Garillia in the top split alongside Justin Levine, Colin Keister, one of the top men in points, and Carson Hocevar, the first amongst the drivers who did not set time, so the rest of the grid set by iRating. Blake Neer, Nicholas Shelton completing the top 30.
And then continuing on through, call it about it. Adam Gilliland and Will Klein going to make up the provisionals through a number 17. Look top to bottom at your starting grid.
Take a look at the weather conditions here at the virtual Martinsville Speedway in Sim. It is June 5th, 2021, this upcoming Saturday, right around 3:45 p.m. local time. 72 degrees Fahrenheit air temp under mostly cloudy skies, a 96-degree track temperature. That could vary. That could go higher. That could go lower as we go on. Winds that are to the northwest at 4 miles an hour and humidity of 54%. Before we get going with tonight's race, let's turn to our next member of the broadcast team down on pit road, bringing us all the stories for this evening. It's our very own Taylor Burris. Taylor, what do you know and what do we need to know before we go racing at Martinsville?
Well, one of the things is you've got to make sure that you take care of coming down pit road. The pit road speeds are very critical here because if given a speeding penalty, especially if we do get the chance to see green flag pit stops, it will cost you dearly. Also, planning on coming down pit road will be critical as well, as drivers realize that they will be going 1 to 2 laps down possibly during a pit stop cycle, as well as planning it out in order for them to come out on top and possibly back on the lead lap once things get going. I'll be keeping it down here to making sure who are the ones to watch on pit road and see who is able to get on here off the track and stay on the lead lap.
It's Taylor Burris, who's going to have all the stories from pit road this evening. Also of note, you look at the outside line behind the number 42 machine of Dylan Alt, and it's 4 Logitech G Altus esports trucks in a row. We know they're going to be tough to beat, but lots of work for everyone to do before we go get the checkered flag in Martinsville, Virginia. Glad that you're with us here on Podium Esports as race number 7 in round 1 of the eNASCAR Road to Pro qualifying iRacing series is green, and a little bit of trouble further back, but they stack up on the outside line, and Michael Finlayson will take his lockdown racing Ford F-150 to the point.
Yeah, for the most part up front, it's going to be a race to single file. Your lead, about 7 or so trucks, going to get this first lap in the books. And Michael Finlayson leading lap number 1 from pole spot. You got Alt, Strauss, Bordeaux, and Retzlaff through the top 5. So no changes aside from Bordeaux and Retzlaff up early. And here's looking Donovan Strauss looking up to the race leaders, able to tuck down in line. It was Dylan Alt. Some of the drivers on the outside, a couple of rows back, got squeezed out, but and 7 truck was able to get down to P2, and look at that already at the top 15 single file. You got to get way back in traffic to find some side-by-side.
And Josh Lee, look at how quickly they have filtered out into single file racing. The first side-by-side battle, you have to go all the way back to 16 with Liam Brotherton, Casey Tucker, Santi Tiros, and Jordan Worth.
Not too surprised. These drivers know that they need to make it all 200 laps in order to have a chance at a good finish. These are the best of the best trying to qualify for the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series, mind you, here in the top split. So they know what they're doing when it comes to racecraft, and they're showing it right now. Is like Evan mentioned, you have to go way back in the pack to see side by side right now. Taking a look at it, Drew Farinage and Jordan Worth. And back up at the front, the driver, the number 42, Dylan Alt, trying to catch the number 36 up in front, and we're now on board with Michael Finlayson. It's 29 in sim, 36 on the truck as they make their way back to the stripe to complete 5 laps on the night.
Front 3 have just been sort of riding around, Evan, I think. They found a groove. It's Derek Bordeaux that's been struggling just a hair. There's already a gap that's developed between his number 04 and Donovan Strauss's number 51 to the tune of about 7/10, which at Martinsville is only about maybe 5 or 6 truck lengths, but still, it's pretty significant this early on.
Well, the fire-off was really good for the 10 truck originally, right? He was able to get up the inside of Boulos, make that pass to go into 4th. But you're right, now that they got a little bit of a momentum in, and these drivers trying to ride this one out, already at lap number 7, you can clearly see 1, 2, and 3 are pulling away. Now, they're not stacking up behind Bordeaux that much, right? You got Retzlaff, 3 truck lengths off or so. Cody Bias, another 3 back from the number 1. So it's not like he's holding everybody up, but maybe that's where that line's going to be. Can he hang on? He's done a better job the last 3 laps than he did the previous 3 to hang even with those top 3, but I mean, so far for Bordeaux, not fast enough to hang with those race leaders, but he's not stacking them up yet, so I think he may be pretty okay in the number 4 spot.
That being said, Josh Lee, if you're somebody who doesn't necessarily need to worry all that much, Derek Bordeaux comes into tonight 7th in points. We're going to see him in round 2, so he can afford to have a bad night if need be, and yet here he is running in the top 5 anyway.
Yeah, but Bordeaux's one of those drivers that you know he is hungry for wins. He's the only driver in the top split this season to have 2 wins. Everybody else is in the single digits when it comes to the split that we broadcast here on Podium Esports. Derek Bordeaux has 2 wins on this season. One, of course, a couple weeks ago at the Talladega Super Speedway. The other one at the Atlanta Motor Speedway. 2 different, completely unique tracks, and with him running here in 4th at Martinsville, could be 3 wins on the season and 3 unique racetracks that he grabs. But grabbing to look on board with Parker Retzlaff. This is a driver to watch. He competes in the ARCA Menards series, knows the short tracks. We saw him a couple of weeks ago at Dover in that series. We see him every single week when the ARCA Menards series East is running those short tracks. If anybody knows how to get it done on a short track, it's Parker Retzlaff, and I'm watching him to take home his first win of the season since, of course, the first round of this campaign back at Las Vegas.
And Parker Retzlaff won the Grand National Tour on short tracks in April of last year, the one of the premier short track series that popped up in the beginning of the pandemic, and consistently finds speed in a late model and a super late model across iRacing. So no surprise that Retzlaff is having a good run. He's the top 5 as we ride on board with Blake Meir, who's in a pretty good fight. This is all the way at the back of the pack, the 30th position, but he's here. Matt Danson is back here. Colin Keister is in the back as well. Little contact there between Matt Danson and Keister, and that'll open up the inside for Near to go. So we now jump on board with Carson Hocevar, who is one of those drivers right on the edge. He had a good finish a few weeks ago at Talladega, but needs to finish well in these final 2 races to make sure he has a shot of making round 2.
Well, we talk about the fact that Martinsville can be a little bit crazy. The other element of these short track races is it's a place where you can see some retribution, right? And Hocevar ruffled some feathers a couple of weeks back. Right now running down in 33rd at the very back of the grid after starting in 28th position. Just a thing to keep in mind is if you have a vendetta against somebody, it's a little bit easier to deliver that message and maybe get away with something. Here at Martinsville, when you're doing 110 miles an hour compared to some of the bigger tracks when you're doing 160, 170. So that is important to note. A couple of drivers in the back already not happy with each other, not necessarily stuff carrying over from previous races, just not happy how they've been racing each other in the opening 20 laps of this race. But at least for the guys up front, they are all right. You see Cozy's 99 in the middle of this group. It's basically middle of the road. Cozy rides 13th position behind him. You got Mercurio and McKissick. This is about 6.5 seconds off for the race lead, where they're all stacked up through the midfield.
They are indeed. Just to give you a sense of what these packs look like, some 20 laps into the race, Finlayson, Alt, and Strauss are on their own. There's about 1.5 seconds back from Strauss in 3rd to Bordeaux in 4th, and he's got Retzlaff, Cody Bias, and Brian LaPrade behind him. Then there's a gap to Jordi Lopez Jr. of about 1 second, and then another gap to Braden Boulos, and that's really where this pack begins. Just right on board with Jeremy Allen. He's just part of the line here. It goes from Boulos all the way back. You can make the case just about to maybe Tucker Minter, I think, in 19th. Everybody's pretty much in line here, and there's a door-to-door battle between Anthony Burrows and Michael Cozy Jr. for the 12th position, Josh.
And they dive back into 1. Burrows stuck on that outside line. Not the most favorable line here at the Martinsville Speedway. Like Jeff McConey mentioned in the opening, you need a really good run if you need to make that outside line work. So the bottom line right on that bottom curb is always the dominant line here at Martinsville. Seems to be the dominant line here tonight is now those groups you just mentioned, James, all single file now, pretty much throughout the entire field. Nobody making any slight moves up to the outside line. Everybody trying to get through the opening laps. 21 down now as the leader Michael Finlayson comes across the line. Good start for this field and ticking those laps away quickly, as we know they do here at Martinsville. Already lap times in the 22nd range. These laps are rather quick, not as quick as a Bristol would be, but definitely quick nonetheless.
Jeff McConey, let's come to you once again, because sometimes your strategy can shift depending on how the opening of races at Martinsville go. We've seen races on Podium Esports where they've been caution-filled in the first 20 laps. This has not been one of them. Clean and green since we started. Does that change the way you approach your pit strategy for the final 175 laps at all, or are you still thinking the same things that you thought when you came into tonight?
I think you need to just split this race in half. Right now, it's looking like it's green. Everyone is going to be patient. Remember, there's only 2 races left until we go over into round 2. And you need to be top 70 in points to advance from round 1 to round 2. So if you're up in this top split, you're in good shape with a good finish that you're going to gain a lot of points. So the guys that don't need as many points, they're already locked in, they're going to be a little bit further towards the back. But Finlayson, who needs to get that win and get in there and get up to that top 70 in points and feel safe, he's going to be running it hard. However, in terms of pit strategy, you're going to split this race in half. If it stays green, you pit at lap 100, you get those 4 fresh tires, and you roll. The most important thing, though, is pretty much beforehand. You have to have had set this truck up in order to be good on the long run if you're going to be out there and performing well. And what does looking good on the long run mean at Martinsville? It means you hold the bottom. That's all it is. You just need to be able to hold and defend that inside line because you will not be making passes on the outside here.
I think maybe most important question as I sit and watch this play out, is there any situation in which you think it may be worth it for someone to try and stay out beyond lap 100 and stretch it to see if you can get a yellow flag, see if you can maybe get a lucky break and take the gamble of maybe giving up some track position if this continues to go green for maybe getting the yellow that allows you to pit under yellow and not lose as many spots coming down pit road? Because if you pit under green here, it's a solid lap and a half, 2 laps that you're going to lose.
I think that could be effective if you're in a do-or-die situation. If you are here to win it or bin it, then yeah, you could stay out and you could try and catch a caution around lap 120 and hold everyone else a lap down and try and get away with something like that. That could work. But if you're not in a position where that's your Hail Mary and you don't need to make that throw, then I would make the pit stop right at 100. You don't need to rock the boat here. Martinsville is already a difficult enough place. You're not going to outsmart the track, and it's going to be pretty darn difficult to outsmart some of the top drivers and crew chiefs on the service. That's why they're up here. So I think you sort of stick to your strategy book you have here. If you have less than 30 laps on the tires when the caution comes out, you stay out because, like you said, there's about 4/10 fall off so far with the lap times and everything. But you can hold a guy behind you, even if you're 4/10 slower at Martinsville, you can hold that guy behind you. He's not going to be happy. He is going to beat your back bumper right off. But if you don't give up that inside line, you can be 4/10 slower and still have the position.
Intriguing all the same, and maybe that means if you've got room to gamble, then I look at somebody like a Derek Bordeaux as one who may end up staying out if he wants to, because he's got room to give up a few points, and just with the way that truck's handling, it's clearly not to his liking in comparison to everybody else around him. And so you could take the 04, hold it out for 25, 30 laps maybe, and see if you get that yellow flag, and even if you don't, maybe you get buried in the pit and you don't get the finish that your truck would merit just based off qualifying. But again, you've got room to make gambles like that if you want, in high contrast to somebody like a Finlayson who needs to be right on the money with the strategy.
Yeah, even without, a win in your in element, the fact that it is going to come down to points, you do have a similar gamesmanship late in these rounds, right? As we run on the board with your second placed runner, Donovan Strauss, looking up to the race leader there for a moment, and these top 3 continue to run nose to tail. But, in the case of Derek Bordeaux, the only multi-time winner in the top splits here, a winner at Atlanta Motor Speedway and Talladega earlier this year, is in a good position on points. He's pretty comfortably a P4 truck, right? We talked about this about 10 laps in. That trend is true. He's nearly a second and a half behind the trucks in front of him, but a full second ahead of the trucks behind him. So he could just cruise to a P4 if this thing goes green all the way. Right now, some cautions and different strategy means that it's not guaranteed, but that's about what he's got, right? P4 truck. You could be happy with those P4 points if he was somebody outside of the top 70 or maybe in the 60s or 50s. I'm taking the P4 points. But because Derek Bordeaux's in a position where P4 is not really going to do him much benefit, he's pretty comfortably in. You're right. He is a perfect candidate for somebody who's close enough to the leaders to where if they make a strategy call, they've got a race truck to back it up, but not close enough, I think, to beat them on pure speed alone. So Bordeaux, a great candidate, hanging it out about 1.6 seconds off of these race leaders to be maybe somebody who would think about it.
As now used to ride in the top 5. Before we go to you, Jeff McConey, let's turn our attention down to pit road. Taylor Burrish.
Hearing from a couple of drivers right now during this run that they're having a little bit of trouble on corner entry. Car feeling a little bit too tight for them. One driver, of course, is Landon Hoffman, who seems to be struggling on that corner entry. Can't seem to get the car to turn down where he needs it in order to make it through. Everybody else, though, just trying to ride through this session before they get to that first set of green flag pit stops, if we stay green at this time. But for the most part, a couple of other drivers are still being radio silent, pretty happy with how their cars are driving right now.
So tightness underneath this sun. Jeff McConaughey, let's come to you on that one, because that's an intriguing one. You would figure with the sunlight, with the warmer temperatures, that these trucks would tend to be loose by nature unless you compensate for that so much in the setup that you build that you end up tightening up the car too much, which sounds like to me that might be the case for some of these drivers, especially towards the back of the field.
So Martinsville is a weird little place where being the track being hot doesn't mean you're going to be loose. It means you're going to have less grip. Those tires aren't going to bite, and you're not going to be able to rotate on them as much as you would want to. So if you're trying to get this truck to turn in, and that is the worst feeling in the world at Martinsville, is it won't turn in. The truck just will not turn. You are putting more than 90 degrees of wheel into it, and you can't get it down to the bottom. You need to just crank that brake bias as far back as it'll go, and that's the only thing that'll help. You can take a swing at your tire pressures, but your right side tires are probably as low as you can possibly get them tire pressure wise. You are doing everything you can, though, but really your best bet is to dial your brake bias back, because it's not the track being this hot doesn't make it loose. It means you have no grip, and those tires aren't biting and helping the truck turn down to the bottom. And what happens when you get tight on entry is it plows right up into the center, and you just cannot get it to turn through the center, and then you lose all your speed on corner exit. And we'll talk more on that later, but I want to just throw this out after Evan's point earlier. It could be that the fourth place truck there is just set up for the long run. And if you've got that long run set up in and he'll start coming in around lap 70 to 80, I would almost say he wants to stay on strategy at that point. So I think it's more behind the scenes here. There's a reason these guys are the best, and it's because they know what these trucks are going to do 30 laps down the line. I think it's going to be interesting. I would almost say if I'm in fourth place right now, I'm going to stick to the leader strategy because I think I can beat him on the long run. That gap's starting to close now.
And if you're right about that, we're going to see that gap progressively get smaller and smaller, especially, I would think, within the next 10 to 20 laps, because that'll be about a third of the way through this race. You start to see the long run speed develop here, usually after about 40 to 60 laps. It starts trending in that direction, and the folks who have the short run speed tend to start falling off. So we haven't seen that yet, though, with Michael Finlayson, but Donovan Strauss looks a little bit closer than he's been maybe the past 15 or 20 laps. I wonder if maybe that truck is coming to the driver in the number 51, and he might be trying to set up Finlayson for a move.
Well, just a quick note there on Derek Bordeaux. Just as he started to close the gap down to sub 1.5, he had a huge moment in turns 1 and 2 last lap, and it cost him 0.6 of a second that lap alone, and he is still now about 0.2 of a second slower per lap. So he really angered those tires, and the gap goes from 1.5 to 2.3 in 2 trips around Martinsville. So those are the mistakes that Bordeaux is going to have to limit either way as we keep an eye on this battle for 8th out of back. But I think you're right. Strauss and Alt really haven't allowed Finlayson to get away much tonight, but he's pressuring much more than he has, actually looking to the inside and side by side for the race lead at quarter distance.
And there it is. So that truck either coming to Strauss or maybe the truck falling away from Finlayson. But in either case, our first proper battle for the race lead all night long, Josh Lee. And Donovan Strauss continues to hold that inside lane. He keeps that up. He likely will have the pass completed and take over the race lead for our first lead change of the evening within the next few corners.
How long can Finlayson hold it on the outside, and how long is he willing to hold it on the outside line? Does he want to keep this lead now, or does he want to drop back and save the tires? Looks like the answer is drop back and save the tires. There goes the 51 Donovan Strauss, now up into the lead, and that number 51 for Elliott Sadler Esports, and Dylan Alt going to grab P2. So Finlayson, in just a handful of laps, goes from the lead now down into third place. Just shows how quickly these these drivers can fall down the order. And Strauss trying to go to victory lane for the second time in the top split this season. Won 4 weeks ago at the Darlington Raceway. Looking for another one at a slightly similar track in the terms that it's one of the historic NASCAR circuits, but comparing this track to Darlington is a lot like comparing apples to oranges, James.
Yeah, they're old for sure, and they have their own character for sure. And maybe the way you get back into the throttle on corner exit is somewhat similar, but you certainly don't use as much brake at Darlington as you do at Martinsville. But then again, Evan, I don't know if there are many other places in the sport where you use as much brake as you do here. We might be able to get a shot here as there's Landon Huffman getting loose just ahead of this battle. A little bit further back in the pack, this is Nicholas Shelton that we're riding on board with, but very few places where you'll see the front rotors and the brakes glow as cherry red as they do here in Southern Virginia.
Well, that goes back to the lack of banking, right? And Jeff talked about it when we took a look at the track facts earlier tonight, that they claim Martinsville's got more than 10 degrees, but it does not feel like it when you're down there, right? The total lack of lateral grip means that you really can't overdrive the corner at all. You get in there just a little bit too hot, you are way up the hill. So it is such a fine line that these drivers are hard on the brakes in, and then again, you can't get too hard on the throttle off. You got to be a little bit patient with it. That goes back to the finesse that we were talking about at the top of the show as well. So those two very different elements makes it tricky to be good in and good out. Some drivers have mastered it maybe better than others have, but I mean, all of a sudden with Finlayson dropping down to third, he is falling off, and it's now the Donovan Strauss and Dylan Alt show. They have pulled away by more than a second back to Finlayson. It's going to have to start to deal with Derek Bordeaux soon, about 1.4 seconds off of him. But one thing I'm seeing up the road, lapped traffic is in the center of turns 1 and 2. There you go up the road. Hocevar is last in the running order, 33rd position. They have not had to deal with any lapped traffic tonight. If this race stays green for another 10-15 laps, we are going to be there.
This has just been a nightmare scenario kind of evening for Hocevar, and it's not like he's had anything happen to him, Josh Lee. There just hasn't been a lot of speed, a lot of pace. But to the banking point, interesting note here that I think is worth making. Technically speaking, Martinsville does have more banking in the corners than the famed Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Indy's got about 9.5 in each of its 4 turns, and here in Martinsville, it's about 12 degrees. Now, I don't think it shows up that well in the sim compared to real life. It certainly does not look near as banked in the program as it does when you see it with your own 2 eyes. But it's certainly an interesting point, I think, worth noting, because it really does underscore just how tricky it is to get around this place, especially if you're about to deal with lap traffic like the leaders are.
Yeah, it's a thing. The lap traffic is a thing of what are the drivers willing to do that are getting lapped? Could they be a Ryan Newman and make it as difficult as possible for the leaders to get by you? Because the lap traffic doesn't need to get out of the way. It's seen as a common courtesy thing to move up into the groove that's not used by the leaders to let the leaders go by, but no rule book is that true by law. So these drivers can do whatever they want when letting the leaders by, as long as they don't wreck the leaders trying to keep them behind them. But Carson Hocevar, talking about his season, we really need to put an asterisk next to it, because he did miss a handful of weeks, obviously competing for Nice Motorsports in the NASCAR Camping World Truck Series. So he was gone a couple of weeks doing things, most notably a couple of weeks ago when the NASCAR Camping World Truck Series was at Circuit of the Americas, had to miss the Road to Pro race that week because he was in Austin, Texas. So talking about Hocevar being in 97th, 155 back from the cut line, this night is not helping, but it could have gotten also limited practice. Could be, hasn't been in the sim for a while, focusing on that real life motorsport, and it's the balance of e-NASCAR and real life NASCAR for Carson Hocevar, trying to have the best of both worlds, but one of them is always going to take over, and it looks like the regular NASCAR is taking over, at least right now, for Hocevar, as they split him on the outside. Dylan Alt made him look to the middle, did not take it. It could be possible Alt's going to look for the lead by using these lap cars as a pick.
whether or not he gets them all set up the right way is one thing. But that's an interesting point that you make, Josh, that it very well could be the real life truck series that keeps Hocevar from performing in these trucks. And although it may not end up well for him and he may miss the cut for the second round of this Road to Pro, we'd be remiss not to give him a nod for the way he's driven the Nice Motorsports trucks in the real life Camping World Truck Series, because he's progressively gotten better, I think, as the season's gone on. He was third at Darlington back at the beginning of May. He was runner-up at Charlotte just a week ago and has shown plenty of speed in real life. So even though maybe we don't see Carson Hocevar for the rest of the summer on the podium of esports airwaves, I think we'll be watching him and be calling his name a lot in the real life truck series, because he clearly has shown some prowess as Dylan Alt goes to the bottom and is looking for that hole, just like you said, for a potential shot at the race lead.
Oh, I think that's an important thing to note, right? If you compare something like what Carson Hocevar would do on the sim to prepare for a real-life NASCAR Camping World Truck Series race, it is very different than the way that Dylan Alt or Donovan Strauss would prepare for an eNASCAR Road to Pro qualifying iRacing Series race in a truck, right? There is the purpose of, I think, using the sim to aid in the real life is to refamiliarize yourself with the braking points and whatnot, and of course your truck setup in real life going to be very different than how it's set up in the sim. If you get to feel a little bit different, right? But you use it to refamiliarize yourself with tracks and braking points and markers and all of that, as now they're dealing with some more lap traffic here, as that's Blake and Ear is going to get cycled through in 30-second, whereas these guys, the Alts and Strausses, they get onto the sim and then they start looking for thousands, right? Get a thousandth here, get a thousandth there, and that's going to add up over the course of a 200-lap race. So I think that's a great point to note. We're used to Hocevar being a little bit more up to speed than it is here tonight, so I think that's a good point that it could be those real-life duties, and maybe those real-life duties have changed how he approaches the free time that he spends in the sim practicing, because it's very different.
Indeed, certainly not quite the same, but there's a lot that applies from sim racing in iRacing to the real-life counterpart, hence why we have the Pro Invitational Series that was just on the Chicago Street Course last night. Now on board with Michael Cozy Jr., he's riding in the 8th position, trying to get around his teammate Jordy Lopez for Logitech G Altus Esports and get a spot in 7th. Looks like Lopez, one of the top trucks, if not the top truck, indeed the top truck for the Logitech G Altus Esports stable, at least at this point. And you've got 3 of their drivers. You've got him, Cozy, and then Seth the Merchant just behind this group as we watch the battle between Anthony Burrows and the 4th member of the Logitech G Altus Esports team, Braden Boulos.
Kind of surprising looking at Anthony Burrows' season here. So we get a great shot of Walter there. Thank you to our producer, Ryan Bauer. But talking about his season for Anthony Burrows, winless currently in the top split, but we talk about him every broadcast. He's always up at the front, always running close to that top spot. Right now in 11th, nothing to scoff at. Still pretty early on here at Martinsville as we're etching our way towards halfway point in this race. But Burrows this season has had pretty good results. He's in that top 70, not at a threat of being eliminated just yet. He just needs to put together a good race here at Martinsville, a good race at Dover, and he'll be looking at round number 2 and getting the round started at Knoxville, which is going to throw a huge curveball on all these drivers, but we'll get to that in a couple weeks' time when we cut the field down to 70.
Got a little bit of time before we get there. Meanwhile, just looking a little bit further back there at Donovan Strauss, still at Alt, continuing to go nose to tail for the race lead and separating themselves nicely from Michael Finlayson, who led at the drop of the green flag and got past about 20 laps ago and is sitting now about 2.1 seconds back of Alt and Strauss, which underscores just how good these two have been. The only question is how well do they work through lap traffic, and is there any other group that might be able to give chase and or use the lap traffic to close in some of these gaps?
But I think something else, as we see them navigate these lap trucks and, to the point that Josh is making where maybe Dylan Alt's going to try to catch out Strauss to make a move, right? I don't know how concerned the 42 is with making that move now, but for the most part, the lap traffic that they dealt with has been relatively easy, right? They've lapped Hocevar, Neer, and Keister. They've opened one truck at a time. It's going to get messy when you get to the low 20s, to the Landon Huffmans and the Santiago Tierez's in 24th and 23rd. That's where you're going to get to. You're catching trucks that are battling for position. And those are going to be drivers who will be less inclined to get out of your way. And maybe that's when Dylan Alt, if he's feeling brave, can jump through and put it 3-1 and go to the race lead. So just curious if they're waiting to get through that possible cycle of pit stops at halfway, because if it stays green, I think the second half of this race is going to be far more challenging on a green flag run than this first half has been.
Going to be a little bit like sports car racing, where sometimes you have to pass some slower cars or vehicles in multi-class racing, and there won't quite be the same speed differences like you see between a prototype and a GT machine, but it might end up being the same sort of concept for the race leaders. A reminder that tonight's broadcast of the eNASCAR Road to Pro Qualifying iRacing Series is brought to you by Marconi Setup Shop, the home for iRacing setups and the official setup shop of Richmond Raceway Esports. With setups for over 20 cars across all 4 license classes, Marconi Setup Shop's team of professional builders has it all. And monthly subscriptions are now available starting at just $8 per month, offering the best setups at the best prices yet. It's simple. You can't beat the best, so don't settle for the rest. There are setups and your victories at Marconi Setup Shop. And for more information, you can visit them at www.marconisetupshop to grab all the setups you need today. And Jeff, the subscription program has been one that's been a long time coming. I know a lot of MSS fans have asked for it. So you sat down and really thought about this to piece together not just a subscription program that exists, but ends up being useful and sensible for a lot of the folks that participate in the sim on a regular basis.
That's exactly right. And the whole idea behind it was people had been asking like crazy for these subscriptions. Can we get them? Can we get them? And we've had this planned for months. I mean, we had the flyer ready to go since last year, and we've been waiting to just get the system perfect, get our price points perfect, and just get this as good as it can possibly be. So for a month, for one car, it's as low as $8. And for every single car, it comes out to less than $3 per month per car. So it's not a bad deal at all. It's designed so that we can help people get better. You get in these setups and you put down laps, you practice, and you learn how to improve. That's the whole goal. Is it looks like a little bit of craziness there. That number 2 truck gets to the inside of Alt, pushes him up out of the way, and now we've got someone who is trying to earn their lap back.
Trying to fight to get back on the lead lap as you look off the rear deck lid of Donovan Strauss. This machine that we are looking at here is Jeremy Allen running the Virginia Tech colors and trying to work his way around the high side around Michael Guerrilla, who's there to the inside. Good move there from Allen to jump around Guerrilla and gain a little bit of time here, but also worth noting that Jeremy Allen is already done with his first pit stop of the evening. Looks like maybe just off the strat here, Jeff. Do we think that Allen might be trying to two-stop this race, given that he came in about lap 80, so maybe 80, 140, 150, 160, or maybe an early pit stop, and maybe he's going to run the final 125 and just run this out? What do you think the call is there for the 2 truck?
Looks like his decision was he's expecting this race to stay green, so the crew chief brought him down, get him in, change the tires, because you can make it to the end on fuel. The window is about 125 to 130 laps on one tank of fuel. So if you fill it up around lap 80, you can make it to the end. Now, it's a short pit strategy. He's going to be struggling for grip at the end. So I guess his idea is going to be make up all that time now and hope for a late race caution. He'll be maybe top 10 or so if things fall his way. And then he can go out, and then he'll be top 10, get 4 tires on a caution. But again, if I'm the crew chief up there on the box, I'm taking the traditional approach to this race. We don't need to do anything crazy. You make that Hail Mary throw when you need to make that Hail Mary throw. If you're in a good enough position, you've done well through these first couple rounds, play it smart, play it safe. Don't try and reinvent the wheel here. Pitting it halfway will keep your tires in good shape at the end.
As we take a further look at the man behind windshield, deep Landon Huffman, also worth noting, Evan Pasoko, that Dylan Alt has taken over the race lead, and not just taking it over, Donovan Strauss has been caught up behind the lap truck of Michael Guerrilla, and that's opened up the gap between the 42 and the 51 to the tune of about a second.
Yeah, pass for the race lead happened coming to the end of lap 87, crossed it over to 88, and it was not much of a fight by Donovan Strauss. Alt got a nose to the inside, and he went on through, and I was not sold on the fact that Dylan Alt was really working hard, right, that Donovan Strauss was holding him up, but clearly that's the case, because as you mentioned, he has already opened that thing up to 1.5 seconds nearly over that truck in the number 2 spot. So we talked about the possibility that, somebody like P5 on the grid earlier in this race, and of course things have cycled through to mess up the running order, I should say. But Derek Bordeaux, right? We were thinking out loud, is Derek Bordeaux going to be good on the long run? It's in fact been the opposite, right? He has fallen off on this long run down to P10. Well, Dylan Alt may have been the driver who was saving the best as the caboose in that three-way battle for the race lead for the longest time, because he is the best truck on track, and it's not particularly close in that discussion as we're working lap number 95.
Everybody else outside of Dylan Alt was at least a tenth slower than the 42 truck that last time by. So there's certainly something to be said about Alt saving his equipment to be strong towards the end of this green flag run. We'll see when he decides to come down pit road as we ride on board with Adam Gilliland, who Josh Lee found himself on the outside looking in coming into this evening, and needs a good finish. This 13th will be decent, but I would imagine he wants to grab a little bit more and climb a little bit higher up the pylon just to make his job at Dover that much easier, because you never know how much you might need in a situation like the one we figure he will probably be in 2 weeks' time.
Yeah, and 68 points back from that cut line, sitting in 83rd. Not particularly a good spot to be in, and 68 points is not a lot, but when you really look at it for Adam Gilliland, where he's running on the racetrack right now, it could be a little bit difficult to continue to climb up those spots. And I'm interested to hear what Evan Basoko thinks on this, because Adam Gilliland was a staple of the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing series for so long, and obviously the way it works is if you're below the cut line of relegation, you got to go back and qualify again in the Contender Series that it is now called. And if you fall out of the Contender Series, you got to start right back here in the qualifying iRacing series. So for a driver to fall from the top step now down to pretty much the 3rd step, trying to get back onto the 2nd step and then the top step once again, it could be a little bit of a confidence hit. It could be a little bit of a demotivation, and it's getting over that could mean the difference between being under the cut line and being above the cut line heading into round 2.
Well, I just wanted to say to that point, Adam Gilliland, he had one of his best performances at that Coke Series level in one of his first seasons, right? Back in 2014 was when he was really at his best, and then he never really got back underneath the top 20, right? So for a lot of the time, you talk about that demoralizing aspect. I think it's harder to get into the series now than it was when he initially qualified in, and that's going to be true next year, the year after that, right? It's only going to continue to get more difficult. So I have nothing but the utmost respect for Adam Gilliland's determination. I think a lot of those veteran drivers who got to that top level weren't able to make some noise what they wanted to, and then have fallen into this hornet's nest of a qualifying format now, could very easily say, you know what, it's not worth it, as we see all those Logitech trucks come down pit road to Burchett and Cozy, or Lopez, I should say, back to back. But I think what Adam Gilliland's doing is great, and I'd argue he is at the top of his game for the last 5-6 years.
Maybe not a surprise. We saw the kind of strategy that Logitech G Altus Esports trucks put together at Talladega. And Jeff McConey, look at what they've done here. We crossed the halfway point and they've come down pit road.
They love to be aggressive on their pit calls and their strategies. And like I still remember at Talladega, I was sitting here trying to figure out what their strategy could possibly be, scratching my head watching it, and then they proved us all wrong. But this time tonight, they pitted right about halfway, and now it's Dylan Alt and Strauss and all these other drivers that are staying out. So I think they're sort of operating on the mindset of, you don't want to be the first one to pit. You don't want to be the first one of your group of people that you're running with to come down pit road. So they're going to stay out and actually push it here, which is not something I was expecting, but it could end up working out for them. Now, this is what their crew chiefs have said will work. This is the strategy they want to go with. You just saw Walter go by on the screen, and look at this absolute cluster, this cluster truck ahead of Dylan Alt here. I wouldn't want to be anywhere near that with a 10-foot stick, because you have people on new tires, on old tires, mixing in and dicing it up. If I'm Alt's crew chief, I'm telling him come down pit road and get out of that hornet's nest, because that is what causes wrecks here at Martinsville. old tires versus new tires, and there it is, the caution flag's out.
Caution flag is out for the first time this evening, and I'm not quite sure where it came from, but yellow flag out on the racetrack for the first time tonight, which puts a lot of the trucks who just came down pit road in a pretty significant hole, namely those Logitech G Altis Esports Trunk 7. Their strategy was set up very nicely at this race, went green for a full 200 laps, but now that we have a yellow, issues abound. I wonder maybe if 10 truck might have been the guilty party here. She got a little bit of damage to the nose. We might be able to get a replay and see what happened.
It's going to be tough for them because we talked about those drivers who pitted way earlier, right? The Jeremy Allens of the world and others. And, they were making up time now at the risk of if a yellow came out, it would hurt them, right? Pitting puts you off of the lead lap, and that's really going to be the pain point here. Let's watch Colin Bowden, though. Off it into turns 1 and 2. Challenged from behind with the 04 truck, and just such a speed difference, just drove right through him. I think that's a little bit of impatience from Derek Bordeaux there, and just put it right through the left quarter panel, tried to squeak through. I think you could have easily avoided that by just firing off on the straightaway, and I don't know if it was a miscommunication there. I don't know if he thought that the inside line was being given to him, but yeah, that's a very late dive on turn 2 to try to make that pass. But just to finish that point, you're right. Everybody who pitted that stuck a lap down is going to be hurt right now because all those leaders who hadn't obviously need to pit. They're going to be good to go to the distance. And that gamble hurts all those drivers that came in first.
And for more on the yellow flag pit stops, let's go down to pit road. Taylor Burris.
Yeah, it was a quick pit stop for Dylan Alt, your race leader, as he was coming down. He wins the race off pit road, followed by Donovan Strauss. But due to the fact some of these drivers have a bit behind after the green flag sessions, we know a couple of them will be starting towards the back half of the field. A couple of drivers, such as Casey Tucker, along with Nicholas Skelton, decided to also come down pit road, not joining up with this group of cars who decided to make their pit stops.
So as the field continues to cycle around, we'll figure out where everybody sits, and we'll see if we can get you a midway race break here within the next few laps or so. A race break, of course, brought to you by our friends at iRacing, the world's premier online racing game. It puts you in the driver's seat to experience today's newest form of competitive motorsport. Virtual racing, all from your home PC. Race virtually on Australian supercars, IndyCar, IMSA, NASCAR, the world of outlaws, and more. Michael Finlayson, your race leader, ahead of Cody Bias. Nicholas Shelton riding in the 3rd spot at this time. Adam Gilliland 4th. Drew Friedrich holds the 5th position in 6th. Goes to Brian Mercurio. Santiago Tires rides in 7th. 8th belongs to Dylan Alt. 9th to Landon Huffman. And 10th to Garrison Hogan, Evan.
Hey, Casey Tucker's going to be middle of the road on the lead lap in the number 11 position ahead of Donovan Strauss in 12th. Strauss going to pick up a few spots here, so it looks like that'll shuffle up the running order just a little bit. But Colin Bowden going to be behind in 13th position with Colin Keister in 14th and Blake Deere in the number 15 spot. Parker Retzlaff, fresh off of the pit lane, is down in 17th ahead of Briar LaPrade in 17th position. Carson Hocevardo, a race high P18 with Michael Cozy Jr. 19th, and all the wave rounds continue to cycle on through. It includes Seth the Merchant P20.
Jordy Lopez Jr. Seth the Merchant's teammate, also going to grab that wave around as he sits in 21st. Tucker Minter in 22nd. Matt Danson, one of those drivers outside looking in, far away off, in 23rd. 24th, Michael Guerrilla. 25th, Justin Levine. 26th, Jeremy Allen. 27th, Anthony Burrows, one of those drivers getting caught on pit road. Derek Bordeaux involved in that last incident in 28th. 29th, it's Brandon McKissick. Liam Brotherton rounds out your top 30, and rounding out the 33 cars taking the green flag, it's Braden Boulos, Jordan Worth getting caught way down the order off of those pit stops, and Will Klein going to round out your field.
Justin Levine also in the back there too. That completes your iRacing Midway race break with over 170,000 drivers on the service and over 90 laser scan tracks and cars to choose from. iRacing is your portal to the racing world. Get on track today at iRacing.com. Michael Finlayson up along the fence. Everybody up near the marbles for this restart that will come on lap 113 of 200. Finlayson hits the gas pedal. Nice jump for him and for Derek Bordeaux, or Cody Bias rather, a teammate to Derek Bordeaux. But those two get away, and it's a door-to-door battle for third between Nicholas Shelton and Adam Gilliland.
We see that side by side much closer to the front than it was on the initial start. Remember that time, basically the top 10 single filed it out ASAP, but side by side is this battle for the number 3 spot. The number 25 on the bottom. Nick Shelton's got the advantage. We mentioned earlier how hard it'll be to make passes up top, but Adam Gilliland, the successful defense, will tuck down in line, and that pass was so encouraging that Fernandez just about tried to make a move for what is P4 up top before he decides to tuck back down in line.
Going to see how much track position really matters here, because you've got some names, Josh Lee, that haven't really been near the front over the course of this race. Adam Gilliland's been buried in the teens for most of this run, as has Nicholas Shelton, as has Drew Freenage, and they all find themselves within the top 5. Also worth noting that Colin Bowden, Colin Keister, Blake Neer, and Carson Hocevar stayed out under the yellow. I think their thinking is that they're going to see if they can get a quick caution and maybe the chance to pit from at least the middle of the pack. They were running deep in the field when that first yellow came out a few laps ago.
Not a terrible idea. Cautions breed cautions, as everybody talks about in eNASCAR and NASCAR alike. Once you get that field stacked up, it could mean more incidents, more yellow flags, and I feel like if a yellow flag comes out in the next couple laps, I'm getting a clip and getting tagged on Twitter by our social media guy, Eric Messer. But anyways, looking at second, third, and fourth on the track, it's 3 former eNASCAR drivers from the Peak Series to the Coke Series, Bias, Gilliland, and Shelton. They're looking really good up at the top of the field, and Dylan Alt, one of the most dominant drivers at the beginning of this race, started second, led when the caution came out and the green flag pit stops began. And taking a look now, 1 lap down in 31st. This is going to be the ultimate recovery drive as we're nearing 80 laps to go. Already past halfway. He needs to be on his best game and needs to hope a caution comes out so he can grab that wave around, because right now he is even far off of the Lucky Dog spot right now in 34th. So Lucky Dog is 22nd.
I saw him come down right at the beginning of this green flag run, and I think that's where the lap comes from on Dylan Alt's machine. Is currently scored in 31st. Meanwhile, also saw a few folks asking about Donovan Strauss. He's back in the 15th position after everything cycled. So a lot of shuffling just by virtue of where that caution flag came in the context of the pit cycle. We get another yellow flag out to split things up. Matt Danson is around in turn 4.
Break Danson was one of those drivers that got stuck a lap down. So this is obviously just going to make his night even worse. And one thing that we didn't mention really was you're going to have a bunch of drivers a lap down fighting, right? So this is way off of the race lead, but this is for position. And it looks like just a little bit of an accordion effect. I don't know if Brotherton had a little bit of help from Jordan Worth, but it certainly looked like it may have had a touch that pushed him into the 30. This high above view may tell the story better, and Danson just the unlucky recipient who ends up in the marbles and goes around. But watch those 3 dancing in the 2 behind. Curious if it was a bit of a shunt from that green truck of Worth from behind. Let's watch.
Really tough to tell here as we take a look at the replay whether or not there was a shot. Maybe a little bit of speed, but if there was contact between Worth and Brotherton, it was very slight. So not to say that could be the case, could not, but I think hard to tell just off of what we're seeing. I think the bigger point to note, Josh Lee, is that for everybody that stayed out, that quartet that have been struggling for speed, the Bowden, the Keisters, the Neers, the Hocevars, this is exactly the break that they needed to get back up towards the front.
I mean, look at the top 5 right now. Adam Gilliland is going to reassume the lead here. Cody Bias in P2. Or sorry, he's coming out of the pit lane at the moment. But Drew Freenage is up there in P2. Brian Mercurio, Brian LaPrade, Michael Cozy Jr. 5 names that we really have not talked about running up front the entire night so far. They're in the top 5 at the moment. A handful of them, Drew Freenage, Brian Mercurio, haven't come down into the pit road yet. They're still waiting on pit stops, and Gilliland, LaPrade, and Cozy on worn tires. Everybody else really in the field pitting on lap 122 on fresh rubber, but still some good time up front. And if those 3 drivers that I just mentioned, Gilliland, LaPrade, and Cozy Jr. can make their tires last until the end of the race, we could very well see them getting the finishes that they need, especially Adam Gilliland.
Let's take a moment here and go side by side for a moment so you don't miss any of the action here as coverage of the eNASCAR Road to Pro Qualifying iRacing Series from Martinsville Speedway continues on Podium Esports.
When you want to be the best, you can't settle for the rest. There's a reason that Makoni Setup Shop is trusted by more virtual and real-world tracks and companies than any other setup shop in iRacing. With partners such as Stafford Motor Speedway, the Nashville Fairgrounds Speedway, Five Flag Speedway, Speed 51, and more. When you want something done right, you go to the experts at Makoni Setup Shop.
With setups available for most series on both asphalt and dirt, built by a team of professional builders consisting of some of the top talents on the service, Makoni Setup Shop LLC has what you need to hit the track with confidence. Head over to MakoniSetupShop.com and learn why Makoni Setup Shop is the official setup shop of Richmond Raceway Esports and is partnered with some of the largest names in virtual and real racing.
And remember, at Makoni Setup Shop, there are setups, but your victories.
Welcome back to Podium Esports coverage of the eNASCAR Road to Pro Qualifying iRacing Series in Martinsville. Adam Gillen set to lead us to the green on lap 127. We go back as Barney, the flagman, waves the green flag across the field. Gillen clear the field in one. Looks like Andrew Frieda is just going to try and do the same off the backstretch, and they'll be door-to-door for third between Brian LaPrade and Brian Mercurio.
Brian LaPrade started 11th in this race. This could be his opportunity to make something happen a bit side by side in that fight, as it looks like it's going to be for third or second on back as it continues to go through. Now Friedage totally clear and up the inside. Going to keep his nose in it. Is that inside entry for Mercurio. So not wanting to give this one up. It is really, though, stacking third on up if they continue to fight like this. But for the second restart in a row, the outside will win the first battle. LaPrade is clear, and he'll tuck down to the inside, now in sole possession of third.
LaPrade is there, and look at Nicholas Shelton on the high line. We've not talked about his truck all that much over the course of this evening, but he started to find speed ahead of Brian Mercurio, who just can't quite get the runs off the corners that he needs to in order to keep that truck wound up and get ahead of these drivers to his outside, Josh.
Mercurio down to the inside now, and he's going to need to find an opening. He might not have a lot of help, and it's a lot like Talladega or Daytona, where you're trying to find an opening in the dominant line, which here at Martinsville is right down on the bottom next to the curb, and you just can't find one. Caution back out on the speedway. Spin out in turn two. The two car involved of Jeremy Allen along with one more.
I wonder who he got a little bit of help from, but it looked like there was a pretty big incident there, and it may have started ahead of him as Jordan Worth got loose on his own out of 1 and 2. Just could not hang on to the truck, spun himself out. He got on the gas too early on corner exit, and he managed to take, looks like Will Klein with them, looks like Justin Levine got involved, and then Allen just had nowhere to go. And how about Michael Finlayson just getting on the brakes hard to make sure he didn't end up in trouble? Remember, that's your pole sitter right there, who's falling back with a little bit of unfortunate timing of these yellows and the pit cycles and all, but heads up driving there from Finlayson to make sure he didn't pick up any damage to his Dude Wipes Ford F-150.
Get that man a Dude Wipes right now.
Jordan Worth was loose basically on the front stretch. Still, I mean, the second he started to go into turn one, that truck broke sideways, and he had to make a decision. Watch, as soon as he gets down into the corner, right there, truck's already sideways. At this point, he has two decisions. One, he can catch it, but it's going to go up the hill into the barbels, lose about a dozen spots. Instead, he tries to walk that tightrope, couldn't do it. Took out a handful of drivers. Finlayson wasn't one of them with that nice park job up on the outside of the racetrack, but a handful of drivers involved were, and you mentioned Jeremy Allen. Remember, he was the driver who we were talking about as the driver maybe spearheading the short pit strategy. Well, the caution came out at the midway point, suckered him off at the lead lap, and that's how quickly a race can fall apart.
Very quickly indeed. These races can go very sideways, and it looks like everybody's deciding to stay out. Now, a little surprised that we haven't seen some of the drivers further back in this field decide to come down pit road. Looks like it was just the pair of Collins, Bowden and Keister, that made a stop. Taylor Burris, over the course of the past few pit stops, have you been able to pick up anything, a few notes that we should be aware of here in the booth and for our audience as well?
Well, a little bit of one thing that I have picked up on is that tempers are starting to flare just a little bit. The reason why of that is because of drivers just a little frustrated with the constant cautions. Even though they understand that this is Martinsville, they are starting to expect this. But that just due to the fact that we had that long green flag run, people are now starting to get a little agitated of this constant caution. So hopefully things will settle down for them. But for the most part, everyone is pretty happy with what they got. A couple of drivers have come down pit road this past time, at least 3 or 4 of them, drivers such as Casey Tucker along with a couple of other drivers. So keep an eye on that to see if any more can decide to come down before we take the green flag.
Could be a few more tempers that end up flaring over the course of the final 65 laps before we get to the end of this race. You go on board with Dylan Alt, who runs up near the fence there, I think just trying to get timing and scoring sorted, which always can be an issue here at Martinsville, Evan. We saw it a few years ago with the Cup Series where they had a yellow flag fall right in the middle of green flag pit stops, and it's about 20 laps under yellow to get the field sorted out. So this is a place where if you've got a lot of folks that need to get wave arounds or folks that need to get back in the lead lap, this is a very easy spot to see yellows extended because there's just not enough room on the racetrack and time to get these sorted out.
Yeah, it can be clunky, right? It's easy to lose a lead lap at a pit cycle. It's easy for drivers trying to get a wave around to not catch up to the field in time. It's also very difficult to get damage fixed, right? Oftentimes drivers with some damage are going to sit on pit road to get it fixed. You can't sit down there for much more than maybe 15 seconds in the box or it's not going to be worth it. So a lot of drivers dealing with the damage. Not a huge deal at a short track like Martinsville, but unique challenges here at the Paperclip.
Back to green flag racing we go on lap 137 of 200. Look at Andrew Freenage, who cut down. That was almost before the start-finish line. Would have been a penalty in real-life NASCAR had he changed lanes before they hit the stripe. But look at this mess here. We're about 4th on back. Josh Lee, they are everywhere down the back straightaway.
Side by side, about 2 rows deep, 3 wide further back. Donovan Strauss has to go way up out of the group. Still 3 wide as they come off the corner. Derek Bordeaux spinning out of turn 4 along with the Logitech Gildes Esports driver. The caution comes out once again. Everybody stacks up back there in turn 4. A handful of cars involved.
Liam Brotherton into the back of Derek Bordeaux, gets him loose and sideways, and that's where this starts as Bordeaux manages to clip Michael Guerrilla, who gets in the fence. Looks like one of the Logitech Gialtis Esports trunks. Braden Boulos got damage in this. I think everybody else managed to sneak out of this and or get on the brakes in time, but that was brewing, Josh Lee, for about half a lap.
And it was some great racing as they dived into 3. And honestly, here at Martinsville, holding 3 wide is not the easiest thing to do by any means. So not surprised we had some contact there. Not surprised we have had some contact over the last couple of restarts because they get so close together and they went roughly about 100 laps under green at the beginning of this race where they weren't racing so close together. And everybody at the beginning of the race sort of went single file quickly. And now in these restarts, they're starting to race a little bit more. Not surprised with the contact, but I think definitely we'll have a little bit of it even out as we edge through the last quarter of this race.
Jeff McConaughey, you've watched these last few restarts turn into cautions very quickly. What have you noticed from your place at Top Martinsville Speedway?
The issue right now is drivers are getting frustrated and they're getting scared and they're getting impatient. And those are the 3 worst things that you can possibly be at a short track. At a short track, you need to be calm, cool, and collected. You can't let things like this get to your head. And you're so afraid of another caution and you're thinking to yourself, cautions, precautions. We've seen 4 or 5 in a row now. I can't be wrapped up in the next one. That means I need to go and I need to get to the front. And that's just never going to work. And another thing these drivers are getting is they're starting to get upset. They're starting to get verbal and say, hey, you can't be doing things like this. And they're either saying it to their streams or they're saying it to their crewmates or other drivers, what have you. But they're getting in that mindset of it's me against the world, and these guys are all gonna be out here and they're gonna wreck me if I don't wreck them, things like that. So not that they're going out and trying to wreck each other, but they're starting to lose that mentality. And in short track racing, you need to stay calm, cool, and collected and just not let things like this get to your head. The more you panic, the worse your race is gonna end up going.
Great comment here from Try to Pass 56 in chat, which I think goes right along with what you said. This is where we get to see who thinks like a pro and who doesn't, and who has enough intuition to look ahead some 50 laps or so and recognize that the most important time to be near the front is at lap 200, and maybe not necessarily right now at lap 133 or 44 or 45 whenever we go back green flag racing.
Exactly. And this really reminds me, and that comment got me thinking, there was a legendary modified driver at Stafford Motor Speedway named Ted Christopher, and if you want someone that is calm in the face of adversity, it was Ted Christopher. The guy would be last second to the track because he wanted to go out and get ice cream right beforehand, so he would show up to the track with an ice cream cone, get in his car, and go out and run you right up to the wall. So it's some crazy stuff. They've got a feature-length film coming out on Stafford Speedway's YouTube channel about him on Saturday, so be sure to check that out, about the life of Ted Christopher. But we're getting ready for some more short track racing here. It's going to be awesome.
Oh, TC36, one of the all-time great.
13. TC 13. Ted Christopher 13. Don't worry, but no, don't worry. He is a living legend up here in New England.
Absolutely, no question about it. As Adam Gilliland goes back to the point, then Freenage, then Mercurio, then LaPrat, and Landon Huffman has made his way to the top 5. Little hip check there to Nicholas Shelton, but the top 5 on this restart got away. Evan, this might be the cleanest restart we've had in a while.
Yeah, this is probably the cleanest we've seen since the initial get-go. And once again, Nicholas Shelton going to find himself in the first battle. This time, it is on the defensive, trying to hang on to position 6. But here comes Cozy up the inside. And if Cozy can get through and the 25 can't get a line, it's going to start to stack up, right? Minter, Tires, Retzlaff, not that far behind either. And I think Cozy's got the upper hand. He should get him right here. In turn number 4, he will. And no opportunity for Shelton to get down, because right on his heels is Tucker Minter down to the bottom, and this could get messy for the 25. Retzlaff is busy fighting with, I think that's Tires up top, so maybe there's going to be a gap, but this 25 could be trapped up here.
So you can move Cozy out of Hagerstown, Maryland, up into 6. You can move Tucker Minter to 7th as Shelton tries to pull the crossover immediately. And just ahead of this, here goes Landon Huffman to the inside of Michael Cozy. But a big incident over in turn number 2 to bring out the yellow flag. Parker Retzlaff is involved this time, Josh.
And unfortunate for Retzlaff, it looks like he just got caught up right in the middle. Maybe a little bit of a checkup from Nicholas Shelton, maybe a little bit of a bump from Cody Bias, but other than that, just got caught up in the middle 3 wide, sandwiched in between 2 trucks, and not a lot he could have done to avoid that incident. Luckily, only looks like the 22 got a bit of damage, and Logitech GLTC Sports driver slammed into his door, but that being Sep the Merchant that we're on board with now. But other than that, just a single car incident with Parker Retzlaff, and we'll be right back going with another restart. There's that love tap to the door for the 42.
Garrison Hogan, I think, got the other big piece of damage out of this, and even then it wasn't all that much, just a little bit of damage to the left front of his machine, as looks like everybody, for the most part, is going to stay outside of Carson Hocevar, who I noticed also got some damage. Looks like he's in, along with Retzlaff, and Seth the Merchant, the 57, is going to decide to come in with Garrison Hogan, so maybe a handful of trucks in on this yellow flag. A few events to tell you about in the world of Podium Esports coming up over the next few days. Tomorrow night, we've got Fast Fridays presented by McConey Setup Shop from Watkins Glen International. Known internally here as the Michael Polasek Special. As we'll get set to bring you that broadcast tomorrow night, 9:30 p.m. Here on the Podium Esports Twitch channel, and you can sign up at McConey Setup Shop or McConeySetupShop.com/event-signups. We'll put that link in chat for you all to use, but anyone who is an iRacing member is eligible to sign up for that event. Then Formula Hybrid Wheel-to-Wheel takes the USF 2000 to the road course at New Hampshire Motor Speedway on the iRacing Twitch channel, 11:30 a.m. Eastern Time. Before at 1 p.m. you've got ESTA back in action from Megaspace here on the Podium Esports Twitch channel. That'll be at 1 p.m. Eastern. The MPI Cup Series penultimate race of the season Michigan International Speedway, 9:15 p.m. Sunday night. We're going to find out who goes to the Championship 4 race at Kansas here on the Podium Esports Twitch channel before Monday Night Racing returns after a Memorial Day hiatus to bring the Mazda MX-5s to Lime Rock Park. First time we've run that combo in that series. You'll see that broadcast pre-race at 7:45 p.m. Eastern, race at 8 on twitch.tv/Podium2, as well as the Podium Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter pages. Series 6 of PCA Sim Racing continues from Michelin Raceway Road Atlanta next Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern on the PCA Sim Racing YouTube channel before we are back in action with the final race of the eNASCAR Road to Pro qualifying iRacing Series first round from Dover International Speedway. We'll find out which drivers make the top 70 at 9 p.m. Eastern right here on the Podium Esports Twitch channel on June 17th. And also of note, if you want to catch the second split of this Road to Pro qualifying iRacing Series, head over to our friends at twitch.tv/STN_racing. STN, Zach Johnson and company, Jacob Pitts, getting all the action from the second split of racing in the Road to Pro qualifying iRacing Series. Likewise, if your business is interested in partnering with Podium Esports, we have space available for you. Podium Esports is a plan for every budget and can custom tailor solutions to suit your needs best. And for more information on the wide variety of partnership possibilities, send an email to admin@podiumesports.com. Just under 50 laps to go here at Martinsville. Adam Gilliland back in control of this as he's been the last few restarts. Gets a good jump here, and Drew Friedage was caught napping just a little bit. That might give the opportunity for Brian Mercurio to go to his inside and maybe take second as Friedage goes up the racetrack in 1 and 2.
Well, Friedage has done a good job on these restarts thus far of protected, right? Every single time, it seems like he's been able to tuck and line behind Gilliland. So this is his first challenge. A little bit of a touch that time, and a yellow immediately as we're stacking them up in 3 and 4 with a couple of trucks up on the fence.
Got a few more trucks involved and another yellow flag to tell you about as this race went green for the first 100 and so, and now has gone to yellows very quickly in the last 25 laps. Running on board here with Donovan Strauss, he was one of the trucks that ended up going around, and as he gets into the corner, just got help, I think, from underneath. Didn't realize anyone was getting into him, but I don't think he would have been able to see that. Looks like that might have been Colin Keister, who tried to dive to the inside of Blake Neer, caught the curb, got to Neer, sent Neer up into Donovan Strauss, and there was nothing, Josh Lee, that the 51 could have done.
Absolutely not. And that Space Station Gaming number 24 was Colin Bowden, who dived it to the inside of Neer, and that hole closed incredibly quickly. The 24 gets on the curb heading into turn 3, slams into the 14, 14 slams into the 51, spins out right in front of the field, and that tore up a lot of race cars. Just the 24 going for an opening that you might have thought was there, and it closed incredibly quickly. Nothing anybody could have done there.
Nothing much that they could have done. Also, a few drivers on pit road. Dylan Alt, Donovan Strauss. Looks like Carson Hocevar, too, just trying to do anything to get that truck fixed up. And maybe not a huge surprise to see Hocevar in particular down pit road, Evan, because he struggled for pace all night long for the most part.
Yeah, if anything, he's somebody who was, I'm not necessarily going to say hoping for these yellows, right? But he's somebody that could benefit because under green, he did not have the long run speed, didn't have the short run speed. So the 42 is somebody who I think could really benefit from a little bit of late race craziness, right? He could pick up a spot. That's all assuming that he stays out of the trouble. And he's on the lead lap, which is a positive. He's 23rd, which is a positive. It's 10 spots up from where he was running before. So it's somebody like him, actually, who I think doesn't necessarily hate that this race is getting a little bit messy because he could stand to benefit. He's running higher now than he was earlier. Now, we talked about, these yellows and a rash of cautions late in the overdriving is going to show, who's driving like a pro and who's not. I always find the funny thing is that the reason we get yellows back to back is because people are frustrated that we're getting yellows back to back, right? They feel like the cautions are taking green flag laps away from them and therefore taking away opportunities for them to advance their position. So what do? They drive more aggressive. What does that do? Cause the yellow. It's a vicious, never-ending cycle. Very ironic, though.
It makes you question whether or not the smart call is to pit or not to pit Jeff McConey, because you can get the fresh tires, but you can also get trapped and lose all that track position and not get the opportunity to race your way back to the front.
With this many cautions, I'm staying out. Honestly, I'm going to stay out here. The tires are they'll hold up. And like I mentioned earlier, if you can defend that inside line, if you can prevent someone from getting inside of you and getting that spot away, then you can hold up a truck that is 3 or 4 tenths quicker even. We saw with Finlayson, the other trucks behind him earlier on, Strauss, all, they were quicker than him, and when they got around, they started pulling away. But he was able to hold them behind him with relative ease for about 60 laps. Even when Strauss was on his back bumper, hitting his back bumper, pushing him through the corner, he defended that inside and was able to stay in front. So if you have the track position and you're ahead of someone else, defend that inside line, stay out on these old tires. Honestly, I'm probably not going to pit again this race.
Trying to stay out and maybe match what Adam Gilliland's doing, which is nail the pit strategy and just get up front and sit up front and stay there. Clean air on the truck has made that 81 machine look far stronger in the second half of this race than he did in the first. Looking at Landon Huffman, who maybe not to much surprise is up near the front, but trouble on the back. I saw Carson Hocevar go around, and we are under yellow yet again, this time on lap 160.
Tough break, and I talk about the vicious cycle, right? You just can't get away from this, and I talked about Hocevar being somebody who could benefit from yellows. Not the way to do so. I think maybe just a little bit of a touch going off it into turn 3. This higher looking to give us a better perspective side by side with the 10. And just a little bit of a touch. The inside checked up. The 10 moved up to avoid it, tapped him, and off and into the wall Hocevar goes. And again, the irony that the driver who could benefit from the late race caution is the one in the chaos.
And probably is going to need to come down pit road as well. Liam Brotherton's been sort of the center of the action tonight, Josh Lee. Seems like anytime we've had a yellow, he hasn't necessarily been the cause of yellows per se, but he's been near the yellows. Seems like every time we've had one in the last 25 laps.
Yeah, wreck magnet out there on the track right now, as it seems to be everybody's a wreck magnet out there right now. They're not really just happening in one concentrated portion of the field, mainly happening throughout the field. Maybe less so top 10, top 5, but everywhere back from there, we're seeing those cautions really spread out throughout that field. And with these back-to-back cautions, really giving these drivers an opportunity to save their stuff. It's not about the long run anymore that we maybe originally thought it was going to be about, and it was about in the first half of this race, but throughout the last half of this race, it's really looking like a short stint now to the finish with 38 to go. If we go green to the end from here, that is less than half of the run we had at the beginning of this race. So it's all about that short run speed. Those drivers with long run setups are getting a little bit scared out there right now. They're not going to have that ending long run they might have been expecting.
And the question, Jeff Piccone, is how easy is it for you to come down pit road if you decide to come down pit road and get your truck transition from a long run setup to a short run setup? Because at this point, I think you certainly have to consider that somehow.
Well, that's a tall order. You know, these trucks tend not to respond well to Martinsville with adjustments and everything. When you have to make a big swing in order to make an impact here, and that's just because so much relies on the driver that it's hard to make the truck feel different throughout the corners. It's pretty much set the way it is when you roll off the truck. So if you want to take a long run setup and turn it into a short run setup, you're going to have to take huge swings at the spring perch offsets, the tire pressures, and everything else to try and get that truck to respond the way you want it to. But at this point, at lap 1, your bet is made and you need to lay in it. This track requires a lot of testing and a lot of knowledge in order to build a good solid setup. So taking your long run set and turning it into a short run one, your driver is not going to be happy with you because you need to make a lot of big swings at the truck.
May come down to just talent and skill. And like you said earlier, one of the big adjustments that you can make to help the truck brake bias, Jeff McConaughey, how much do you think that plays into this?
That's where it can really help you. Brake bias is huge here. These trucks love brake bias adjustments. So you can dial it back up to 3%, dial it forward up to 3%. But I've always found myself as the run goes on, every time I've run here, and I've turned a lot of laps in Martinsville, I am always dialing the brake bias backwards. I'm always trying to get that truck looser on entry, get it to turn more, make it want to rotate. That's what always tends to help me. So I'm usually by lap 40, I'm already back the full 3% that I can go.
Down to 34 laps to go now as we're back to green flag racing. And look at Brian Mercurio to the inside of Bryla Pratt. Same for Landon Huffman. And I couldn't tell if it was Nicholas Shelton or Michael Cozy Jr., but somebody back there, Evan Pachoco, was racing with elbows out, not afraid to try and swing the side of the truck at somebody just to widen the rear end and make sure nobody could get alongside.
Shelton's been working so hard on the outside. Basically, every single restart, and the perspective you have now is on board with the Cozy. Now looking off of the back, and there it is, right-hand side. Shelton up on the outside of the racetrack. These two drivers running 7th and 8th, respectively. Inside, going to be the place to be in 3 and 4. So Cozy defends it up the road. Landon Huffman at a race-high P4 now, with the outside pass on Tucker Minter, who's going to try to fight back. Huffman bobbled a bit at a 2, leaves the inside open, but the 10 car blocked in for the moment. That's LaPrat also stuck up on the outside, but here should be a wide open opportunity for him to tuck in line, and he does with 30 laps to go next time through. Again, it is Nicholas Shelton stuck on the outside after a restart. Tell me if you heard that one before.
I'm about to say Nicholas Shelton. We've seen that bright green machine stuck up at the top, but I want to turn my attention just a little bit further up in this group. Landon Huffman, who started back in 20th and did not look all that strong in the opening part of this race. Right on board with Tucker Minter, who's riding behind Huffman's number 75. But again, reminder that Huffman Live, as he's found here on Twitch, is a short track driver by nature. He runs regularly at Hickory Motor Speedway and Tri-County Speedway in North Carolina. Has plenty of late model experience, plenty of short track experience. This is his favorite type of racing, and in that sense, Josh Lee, maybe not a shocker that we come to the most short tracks that we've run this year in Road to Pro, and Landon Huffman's putting together one of his best runs this season so far.
Not surprised at all. Really, the dominant tracks in real life translate to the dominant tracks in the sim, at least for the drivers that blend both worlds. But looking at the top 5 right now, Tucker Minter in 5th, up 16 spots. Same thing for Landon Huffman. Up 13 is Brian Mercurio. Up 21 is Drew Farinage. And up 31 spots is Adam Gilliland. This top 5 really taking advantage from that first caution around lap 107. And now every subsequent caution from there on out to keep that top 5 and keep the large amounts of positions they have gained since the drop of the green flag.
At this point, the only person who could put together a case for the Hard Charger Award would be Will Klein, as the only person in this field that started behind Adam Gilliland, our race leader. Problem for Will is that he's currently stuck in 30th. So by default, Adam Gilliland has the hard charge of the night, at least for now, in his sights. But more importantly, he's got a top split win at Martinsville in the eNASCAR Road to Pro qualifying iRacing series in his sights, and that'll be the big prize, especially for somebody who came into tonight on the outside looking in of the top 70. Coming to 25 laps to go, these top 5 are pretty well spread out, but the good battles, like you noted, Evan Pistocco, right around Nicholas Shelton. Seems like that 25 truck is the eye of the hurricane so far as side-by-side action is concerned.
Yeah, and he's got a couple of drivers around him, the likes of Bias, Finlayson, and Lopez, who I would almost argue are more deserving of the hard charger, because it's been harder for cars in the top 10 to stay there than it's been for drivers in the 20s, right? That time to the yellow flag, past halfway, really benefited a lot of these drivers. Now, that's not to say that they haven't deserved it, because Gilliland, Farinage, they have been rocks since they've been up to the front of the field, right? They haven't let anything slip, and they've been very good track position-wise, but you got more drivers inside of the top 10 right now that started outside of the top 20 than the other way around. So there's been a lot of drivers who have had the ups and downs tonight, and finally enjoying a green flag run to see, can they challenge Gilliland? Can they challenge Farinage, right? When we were only getting 3-4 laps at a time, easier enough, and there's another one. So they enjoy the longer runs to try to make up some positions, but I think track position going to be so critical in the end with all these yellows. And speaking of the Logitech entries, it's Seth the Merchant with the problem in 3 and 4.
Oh, wow.
I'm about to say, yeah, same point that I was thinking. Evan, we told you not to say it. But
it's never going to be as bad as last time, but it's just the way it is.
Yeah, last time out of Charlotte was a little bit perfect. But contact between Donovan Strauss and Seth the Merchant bringing us under yellow. And you want to talk about drivers who have had nights go better and have fallen off in the second half of this race. Donovan Strauss had such a strong truck in the opening 100 laps, and it just has completely fallen away from him over these last 50 or so. Same for Seth the Merchant. And to the point that you were making, Evan, that I think is so important, only 2 drivers in the top 10 started in the top 10 at the beginning of this evening. And
the highest starting spot of anyone in our top 5 right now, Brian Mercurio, who started in 16th. So this has very much been a game of patience for our front runners who understand that as much as you want to try and go get every spot, Josh Lee, it just isn't worth it in the first 100 laps. And it's now that you want to actually be racing for these positions when it really does start to matter, as Jordan Worth pulls it behind the wall and looks like he will finish up tonight 32nd.
And it's tough, especially with 20 to go, because those 20 laps get used up incredibly quickly here at Martinsville, and we saw it since that last caution on lap 107. We've seen it in every subsequent caution. When the racing picks up, so does the incidents, so does the mistakes, so does the cautions. If they're racing hard from the drop of the green flag to the checkered flag, you're gonna see less cautions because they know how their trucks are going to handle. Most of this field was single file for the first half of this race. Now that they need to race, they're getting in traffic. Some of their trucks might not be well equipped to do that, so they're now getting contact. They're bringing out these yellow flags, and now it's becoming the doomsday bells are starting to ring, and the sirens are starting to ring for a lot of these drivers that, hey, we're running out of time. We need to start moving now. But if they start moving, that increases the chance of getting caught up in an incident, which is going to bring them way down the order and into the pit lane.
I think the bigger problem, like Jeff said, is that with the number of cautions we've had, the amount of laps that we have left to go decreasing ever so slightly, even if you do have fresh tires, even if you do put yourself in a good spot here, you're just not going to have a lot of time to make up the spots. And to some degree, especially at a place like Martinsville, you're sort of stuck where you are. This isn't necessarily an auto club where you can get a good run and maybe pick up 4, 5, 6 spots within the span of a lap. You try and do that here at Martinsville, it will at minimum take you around 5 to 10 laps, and that's if everything is in your favor. Normally it takes longer than that.
Well, this is the duality. We talk about the challenges that these drivers go through late in this race, and what a difference this race has been, right? As the lights go on top of the pace car, do we get set for a restart with 16 laps to go? Opening half of this race, clean, green. Drivers were able to stretch it out to the long run, and this race will be defined by what strategy call you made at the halfway point, right? Those drivers who got caught out have been really hard-pressed to recover from that point. I mentioned that Gilliland and Friedrich have been a rock since then, and who'd have thought drivers who were 32nd and 24th on the grid are going to be in the catbird seat? Can they hang on to the very end? Gilliland's been untouchable on the restart so far.
Been great stuff for Adam Gilliland. I saw Landon Huffman spin the tires a bit on this restart. Lap 185 now on the books. He'll try and follow Freenage, who will try and work the outside of Mercurio to go to second outright as Tucker Minter looks to the inside of the 75 going into 3.
Back into the corner, still too wide, a little bit further back as Adam Gilliland tries to check out from the field. Drew Farina is going to clear Brian Mercurio, but Mercurio not clear yet. To his outside comes Landon Huffman trying to improve on his positions there, trying to grab P3 as Tucker Minter in P5 goes on to the bottom of the racetrack on Huffman as a couple of drivers start dicing further back. Everybody looking good and clean as they head through turns 3 and 4, but Adam Gilliland running away, and I will steal this stat from Evan Basoko. He did give it to me in our Discord chat. One and only win in the Coke Series for Adam Gilliland, Daytona 2013, trying to get back into the series and trying to get a win here in the top split of the eNASCAR Road to Pro qualifying iRacing series, which has been proven to be incredibly difficult. And we'd go back to back in former eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing series drivers and wins as well. Cody Bias won 2 weeks ago at Charlotte.
Somehow, some way, Santiago Gutierrez has been sliding all over the racetrack and has not wrecked yet. He's on some of the oldest tires in the field, 65 laps on this current run, and has subsequently slid towards the back as the fresher tires pass him. Just waiting to see if he manages to spread this field out. Maybe this ends up being the green flag run that we take to the end, or if we get another yellow in short succession. We've almost had a few. There's a little bit of love tap from Carson Hocevar. You've also got Blake Meir around all this. Derek Bordeaux is there. Here comes Hocevar to the inside to move Santi Tires and bring out the yellow flag. And I would say the crystal ball there was working quite well. Had a hunch that we might see something around the 10 machine, and Tires is the one who goes around in turn 3 to bring out the yellow with just over 10 laps to go.
I'm blaming Evan.
I didn't even say anything this time. And I don't even know who to blame in this one for the guys on track, right? I mean, Tires is running the solo line. Hocevar's pretty committed to the bottom, but it's still from a half a truck length back. You're not going to make that move at lap 89, right? Can I fault Carson Hocevar for making that move at this point in the race? I can't really, right? He didn't overdrive the corner. He just drove it into the bottom. It's just tough. I mean, you can see the gap that he comes from behind. Obviously, Santi's not expecting that move to come, but Tires and some of the oldest tires really defenseless. He can't get the bite off of the corner to get down lower and defend that. Liam Brotherton was on real old tires, but that's just one of those things that happens late in this race. And I know how frustrating it's got to be for the guys up front when it seems all these incidents are towards the rear.
Really tough there. The only thing I can think of is Tires decides to come get tires now and fix that issue is that if he was in the mindset of just thinking about how these trucks would race, if everybody was on his tires and completely misjudged the gap from which somebody on fresh tires could get down to the inside and get underneath him, that's about as good as it's going to get. And that's about the best line of thinking I can take. But at this point, Tires down in 27th. He's the last truck on the lead lap and just said, you know what, at this point, I might as well go ahead and get fresh tires and see if I can do something at the end of this. But not a good run at Ford Tires and probably won't have the opportunity to make up much time either.
And now the clock is especially running down. We're at 8 to go under the pace car. Going green, probably 6 or 5 to go. If we get another caution, we'll be heading into overtime. If we don't get another caution, it's only 5 laps left in this race. There's time quickly ran out with all these caution laps. It seemed like just a handful of minutes ago, we were in the green flag pit stops on lap 100, and now we're 8 to go before the checkered flag. There's a lot of drivers that need to work their way back up through the field. Michael Finlayson trying to work his way back up to the lead. He's in 10th. Nicholas Shelton looking for more spots. He's in 8th. Tucker Minter looking to spoil the party in the top 5. He's sitting in 4th. Adam Gilliland trying to win this race. Drew Farinage might be able to walk his away with his first Road to Pro win of the season here in the top split. He's in 2nd. A lot of unfamiliar names at the top of the charts are in the top of the leaderboard right now. We could see a very interesting finish.
That may be unfamiliar names compared to the beginning of the race, but if there's one person who we know is familiar with these drivers, how about the man who calls them on Monday nights for Real Some Racing, Evan Pasoka. You got two of the folks that we see regularly in those broadcasts at the front of this field, but they're also 2 of the drivers with the most experience here.
Yeah, there's no shock, right? We talk about what does experience mean on the service, right? Is experience, only in the Coke Series, only at this level, or is it at some of those league levels, right? And what we're noticing now, trend-wise over the last 2-3 years is that a lot of drivers that have finally decided to make a run through this qualifying iRacing series have been on the sim forever. So these guys are so experienced in these trucks at Martinsville on iRacing. So there may be new names, in the case of Farinage and some of the other guys at this level, but they are very experienced under pressure. It's a unique challenge, and so will this 5-lap to go restart. Gilliland, so close he can taste it. He's been perfect on the restarts thus far. Can he just squeak 1, 2, or more out of it? Could this be the final restart of the night?
We do have green white checkers, by the way. I think it's worth noting, given the amount of yellows that we have, but a great restart for Adam Gilliland, clear of Farinage by about 2 truck lengths before they even hit the start-finish line. Mercurio down to the inside again, a little bit of a bump from Tucker Minter to try and get Farinage loose, and that might give an opportunity for Mercurio to make something happen as Minter goes down low.
Everybody 2 by 2 as they dive back into turn number 3. Farinage trying to run the outside line. It's Mercurio on the inside. 2 Logitech GLTC Sports drivers sit battling for 5th as Landon Huffman tries to poke his nose down to the inside as Tucker Minter is able to sit there in P4. Will he make a brave move down to the inside or maybe go up the middle on the 41 and the 5, but all out in front as they sit side by side for 2nd. Caution comes out. Drivers around in turn 4.
Evan!
I can't blame him this time, but Blake Muir, the one around in the corner, and Jeff Bocconi, green-white checker. Is it outright all bets are off, or what's your mindset here?
My mindset is win. If I am Adam Gilliland, I am jumping the start, and I am getting as good a run as I possibly can into turn 1, and if there is ever a time that you get aggressive on a short track, now is the time. So this is where it all falls into the driver's hands. The crew chief has done what they can do. They've made the strategy calls. They've done everything that they can possibly do. Now it comes down to the drivers. What can they do? What can they possibly find that no one else has here to come home the winner in a green-white checkered start at Martinsville. If there weren't any hurt feelings beforehand, there's going to be at the end of this race. This is where it gets crazy.
Everybody single file here, at least for the moment, just to get things lined up so we can get our first green-white checker lined up. But before we go to the green-white checker finish, let's tell you about some of the events coming up over the course of the next week on Podium Esports. Tomorrow night, we are on air with Fast Fridays, presented by McConey Setup Shop from Watkins Glen International. You'll see that broadcast here on the Podium Esports Twitch channel at 9:30 p.m. Eastern, featuring the next-gen cars. And if you click the link in chat, you can head on over to the MSF website to sign up today. The Formula Hybrid, folks, will go wheel to wheel at the New Hampshire Road Course, the USF 2000 cars. You'll see that broadcast Saturday, June 5th, 11:30 a.m. Eastern on the iRacing Twitch channel. And then at 1 p.m., it's the Esports Drift Association from Megaspace. So if you like drift racing, Keenan Kusin, Ian Plash going to bring you all the action at 1 p.m. on Saturday afternoon. Sunday night, 9:15 p.m. Eastern, it's the penultimate race of the MPI Cup Series from Michigan International Speedway. We'll find out who makes the championship for in that event on the Podium Esports Twitch channel. And then Monday Night Racing comes to you the night after, 7:45 p.m. Eastern start time for pre-race with Taylor Burris and Justin Prince before we bring the race action at 8 p.m. Eastern. We'll take the Mazda MX-5 Miata Cup cars to Lime Rock, one of the most popular road racing vehicles on the surface at one of the most popular road racing tracks. Should be a fun combo to kick off our summer with M&R presented by Napa. PCA Sim Racing continues Series 6 with Michelin Raceway Road Atlanta. Round 7 of their campaign comes your way at 8 p.m. next Wednesday, June 9th on the PCA Sim Racing YouTube channel. And then we are back with the eNASCAR Road to Pro Qualifying iRacing Series from Dover International Speedway, 9 p.m. June 17th. We'll find out which 70 drivers advance into the second round of the eNASCAR Road to Pro Qualifying iRacing Series for 2021. First of 3 green-white checkers coming our way. It is Adam Gillen, Drew Friedage, Brian Mercurio, Tucker Minter, Michael Cozy Jr., your top 5, then Landon Huffman, Jordy Lopez Jr., Brian LaPrade, Nicholas Shelton, Brandon McKissick, your top 10. And all bets are off indeed. Bumpers will be used for sure. The question is where, the question is when, and the question is what sort of effect will it have on who wins this race. Adam Gillen can negate that all, though, with a great restart. That's exactly what he got. Another truck length clear of the rest of the field before they get to turn 1, so it's to Friedage and Mercurio to figure out who won second.
And this is exactly what Gilliland wants to see, is the battle for second. Friedage going to have the advantage almost all the way clear. Mercurio, he will be into 3 and 4, and that gives Gilliland a 3 truck length advantage he needs, looking for the white flag.
Adam Gilliland needed a good finish. He was looking on the outside of the top 70 coming into points tonight. Started 32nd in this race. Friedage will have one shot to maybe send it in deep into 3 and 4, but he's pretty far back already, and he will hold his line, as will Adam Gilliland. And it's the 81 machine for Gary Mercer Trucking who brings his Chevy Silverado across the line to win the eNASCAR Road to Pro Qualifying iRacing Series at Martinsville. Just what the doctor ordered for the 81 truck, and when he needed a win in the worst way, Josh Lee, he got exactly that.
83rd. He came into this race 83rd, 68 points back from the cut line. This could either put him above the cut line or severely help him towards that cut line heading into Dover. And we got to talk about second place. Drew Friedage came in 125th, 262 behind the cut line. This is a huge help for him as he goes into Dover, possibly in a must-win situation, but at least he can have a little bit of anxiety taken off that he'll know he'll have a shot heading into the next round.
He will indeed have a shot, as will Friedage. It depends on how the rest of this pans out, but it's going to be fun to see how the points shake out and where people land in relation to their competitors going into Dover, which we know is going to be a wild race. But you look at some of the names up towards the front here, Evan Pasoko, not just Gillen and Friedage, but some of the other top finishers. One pretty consistent theme: patience, and then maybe experience to go with it.
Yeah, I'll go back to the point that I've harped on a few times. The fact that, yes, these drivers did get the track position courtesy of the time of the yellow and a bit of a strategy, right? But there were points in the second half of the race where there was enough green flag laps, and they were actually at a tire disadvantage, right? Tucker Minter is going to want this race to have had more green flag laps because he had 15-lap fresher tires than the guys who come home in the top 3, right? Brandon McKissick had 40-some-odd lap fresher tires, but finished down in 10th position. They did not have the opportunities late in the race to use those fresh tires, but those guys up front could have easily had made a mistake, right? Every time it came to a restart, I said, Adam Gilliland was perfect. Can he stay perfect? The answer was yes. Those drivers did have the benefit of finding themselves in that position at about the 2/3 distance marker, James, but they did not falter the opportunity, and that's critical for these drivers to get a lot of big points now with only 1 week left.
And on every one of those last restarts, it was a diamond from Adam Gillen that got him those 1 to 2 truck length gaps. He came up high off the banking, just drove it straight down to the bottom on corner exit and came down the start finish line and down the front straightaway. And that extra room that you create when you run the corner that way created that gap that he needed to be clear, be safe, and not have to worry about any bumpers from behind. Let's take a look at your full field rundown and tell you where your favorite driver finished this evening. Adam Gillen, your winner over Andrew Friedage. Brian Mercurio completes our podium with Tucker Minter and Michael Cozy Jr. rounding out the top 5. Jordy Lopez Jr. in there in 6th. Good pair of finishers for Logitech GLTC Sports. Landon Huffman for Total Advantage was 7th. Lockdown Racing's Brian LaPrade was 8th. And Nicholas Shelton and Brandon McKissick completed the top 10. Evan.
Yeah, a lot of drivers who started in the top 10 slid back to this next group of drivers. Colin Keister ends up in the number 11 spot, but then your pole sitter Michael Finlayson dropping to position number 12. Anthony Burrows comes home exactly where he started in 13th position, ahead of Cody Bias 14th, and Seth the Virgin in P15. I mentioned Carson Hocevar, right? No speed on the green flag run. Could he benefit for the yellows even after being involved in some incidents? Picks up big to P16 ahead of Derek Bordeaux in 17th spot, who struggled on the long run of that early green flag stretch, ahead of Michael Guerrilla, who comes home at 18th spot. Garrison Hogan is 19th, and Brayden DeBulos, didn't talk much about him. He started this race on row 2. He finishes in 20th.
21st coming home is going to be Casey Tucker. Liam Brotherton, a crash magnet tonight, ends up in 22nd. Santiago Tierrez in 23rd. Colin Bowden 24th. Dylan Alt, we saw him so dominant at the beginning of this race. Got caught a lap down. Unfortunately, couldn't rebound. He ends up in 25th. Blake Neer 26th. Will Klein in 27th. Donovan Strauss, another one of those dominant trucks. Unfortunate day for him. He ends up in 28th. Matt Danson 29th. Justin Levine in 30th. And rounding out your field, unfortunate day for Parker Retzlaff as he comes home in 31st. Jordan Worth, another unfortunate day for him. He'll end up 29 laps down. He needed a good one as he was sitting 79th, so close to the cut line. Definitely not going to help him heading into Dover. Jeremy Allen rounds out your field.
There's a look at all 33 drivers who started tonight's race, and we'll turn our attention now to our race winner as Adam Gillen will come up into the booth, and old Giller will join us for the first time this season as a race winner in the eNASCAR Road to Pro Qualifying iRacing Series. Biggest question for you off the top of things here, Adam. Experience. We know you have tons of it. How much did that help you on those late race restarts when we just kept getting yellow after yellow after yellow?
Helped a good bit. I really didn't expect when we pitted on whatever it was, 110 or something to be the last pit stop. The cautions fell to where, there really wasn't any stress on whether or not to stay out or pit. Especially after, Michael and Cody pitted right there. But those late race restarts were definitely stressful. I was trying to mix it up, obviously, and make sure second place didn't time it. But with the angle of the corner and just where I was going every time, I felt like it was going to be tough for them to get around me.
It's a point that we made right before we came on and brought you in, that you started high, came down low, and then got back onto the straightaway. And when you do that, it creates a little bit of extra distance that you have to travel, which allows you to space yourself out and keep yourself away. And I have to believe that's a technique that you perfected through years and years of running here. But I think maybe more importantly, towards the beginning of this race, you didn't necessarily have the best trucks. So did you have a sense of maybe waiting for this race to play out the way it did, where you'd find a gap, you'd find an opportunity off of a yellow to get track position, and that even if you didn't have the best truck in the first half of this race, that it would eventually come to you?
You know, it was really tough for me to figure out what kind of truck I had. Started 32nd. I really messed up my qualifying lap and didn't get a lap down. But surprisingly, I was able to, I think, drive up to about 14th or 13th there before the green flag pit stop cycled. And I really felt like, you know, the truck was pretty good because I didn't really see other guys being able to do that. You know, for whatever reason, this particular build, it seems like we have dirty air, as crazy as it sounds, here at Martinsville. And it was really tough to pass someone, you know, more so than years past. But I felt like we had a good truck. Obviously need a track position, and that, you know, that came with staying out. I was fixing to come in about 5 laps. 110 was going to be my number. I wanted to let it run a little bit longer than normal, than, you know, just splitting it even halfway. But the caution worked out, and we took advantage of it.
More importantly, the point situation resolves itself quite nicely for you after this evening. We talked on multiple occasions already on our side about how you were not in the top 70 coming into tonight. We still don't quite know what the calculations are going to look like after all the splits are taken into account, but this will no doubt help you significantly in your quest to make the top 70 and to be able to get a win in top split, get max points like this. Is it more of a relief? Is it more of a confidence booster? How do you look at this result in the context of the season?
I think it's a little bit of both. You know, it's really tough to win these races. And obviously, like you mentioned, the spot I was in at points, you know, just 2 races ago, I was sitting like 35th and, you know, just had disaster at Darlington. And I don't even remember where we went last. But yeah, it's been a really up and down season. We've had some good runs and some bad ones. Oh, Charlotte, we ran terrible at Charlotte. But yeah, no, it's really refreshing to have this and hopefully have a nice buffer going into Dover. Kevin King and all the guys on the team, you know, they've just really worked really hard to try to get this thing dialed in, and we had a really good piece tonight. Just need to find a little more in the mile and a half, but you know, I can't thank Kevin and all those guys enough for the countless hours they're putting in. Hopefully we can finish it off at Dover and make round 2 and carry this speed.
Adam, congratulations on your victory in the top split of the eNASCAR Road to Pro qualifying iRacing series this evening. Thanks for the time, and best of luck to you as you try and make the top 70 at Dover in 2 weeks' time.
Thanks so much.
Adam Gillen, your race winner. We go from P1 to P2 just down pit road. 2 old friends going to link up here, and Drew Friedage is with our very own Evan Pasoka.
It's the second place finish tonight for the virtual Martinsville Speedway for Drew Friedage. Drew, congratulations on a solid result. This night was kind of a tale of 2 races almost, right? You start from 24th. Walk us through the first half of this one and then how those fortunes changed in the second half and how you're able to hang on to P2.
Yeah, forgive me, I'm losing my voice here, but just messed up qualifying. The setup was a lot better than where we put it, and just trying to just fighting all night to get as many spots. I think we kind of lucked out getting up front there with the pit stops and just, you know, took what we could. And shame we didn't get a long run. I think we might have had a little something for Adam, but it just got extremely lucky. I mean, I don't think we were supposed to be up there, and just really happy with the finish. We needed it, and going to Dover and see if we can put something together and try to make the top 70 here.
Of course, that was the objective, right? You guys knew you had a lot of work to do coming into this evening. How big is this going to change things as we head into Dover next week?
Yeah, it's always just a blessing to even be out here with half the names. I don't feel like I belong out here with all these guys, and just to finish second, it's incredible. It changes a lot. You know, it kind of came in just throwing a Hail Mary at it, and it worked tonight. So I think depending on where the points are, we're just going to go out there, try to get a top 10 next week, and see where we end up. But you know, we had bad luck this season. I think we're not as bad as we are on the points, but definitely really, really happy to get the second.
I just wanted to touch on that for one more point. You talk about being with all these other guys, right? You got the 5th highest I rated in this. I know it doesn't tell the tale entirely for how much experience at this level a lot of these drivers have, but you know, we're through 7 of 8 races in this opening round. What have you been able to learn racing with these guys up to this point that you think you're going to be able to take with you?
It's just that, you know, Evan, you know, we run RSR Monday nights, and this just takes it up another level, how aggressive you have to be, and you can't really give much. I do that a lot, is give too much, I think. So you got to take here, and it's just a competition. It's crazy. It's so fun to be out there. We had long runs here, and that's just a testament to how good everybody is. So yeah, just, you know, kind of picking up my 3rd year running in this in Road to Pro. So just trying to learn how to be better, how to be more aggressive, and you just learn from that. If we make top 70, we do, but if not, it's not a wasted year. You know, we kind of we learned a lot. So just hoping to have a good week and not have this season be a total loss.
Appreciate you sticking around, Andrew, and chatting with us. Congratulations on the good result. I'll catch you Monday, and then we'll see you back here on this side of things over at Dover.
Thanks, Evan. Do want to say a big thanks to the line. Donovan Strauss built great setups all year. Just everybody over there. I'll forget everybody's name, but big shout out to them for all the help and putting this P2 together.
Just second place finisher tonight for the virtual Martinsville Speedway. Best finish so far of this 2021 eNASCAR Road to Pro qualifying iRacing series for Drew Faridaj. And we'll continue on down the pit lane over to Josh Lee. He's standing by with our third place finisher, Brian Mercurio.
And another great finish for Brian Mercurio. Brian, you came into tonight's race 20th in the points, just looking to get yourself locked in. I think it's safe to assume now, going to keep on climbing up further into those points. You're sitting pretty comfortably heading into round number 2. Is your focus going to shift now away from Dover over to round 2, or are you focusing one race at a time?
You just got to take it one race at a time here. Dover's always a track I have circled on my calendar. Ran really good here last year, and it was my best finish back in the Pro Series last year. So I always liked Dover, and it might not mean a lot considering I'll probably be locked in on points going in here. So if an opportunity comes up to maybe try something a little goofy on the setup or pit strategy, I have a little bit of breathing room here. But I'm still looking forward to Dover. I know it's a good track, so just taking it one race at a time.
And going back to the race here at Martinsville, it was a bit of a caution fest in the last half of the race. How did you be able to survive all of those incidents? You kind of found yourself up towards the front after that first caution, and with all the subsequent cautions, you never really dropped from that top spot.
No, I know I wasn't really the best on a long run, and I was working with my crew chief Kyle Riley there, and he was just saying, just stay out as long as you can here. At that point, I was kind of losing a ton of spots. I was in the high 20s, and at that point, it's kind of a no risk type of strategy. And if a caution falls my way, I was probably going to be able to shuffle out into the top 10, which is exactly what happened. A few guys pitted in front of us a few laps after that, found ourselves in third, and pretty much just rode there the rest of the race. Definitely, I've been on the other end of this kind of strategy before when you just get trapped pitting during a green flag cycle. So to be on the good end of it feels really good. I'm not really the best at short tracks. You can ask, any of my teammates or anybody, especially a track like Martinsville. I just, I wouldn't consider them my specialty. So really to be able to get a good finish and even finish on the podium here is just something I never would have expected coming in tonight. So I'm happier than I thought I could have been, really.
Tout yourself as not a short track guy, and you walk it home P3. That's a pretty good effort from me. Brian, thank you so much for joining us up here in the booth. Anyone else you would like to thank here on Podium Esports?
Yeah, I'd like to give a big shout out to all the guys over at Low Line Racing. Shout out to my teammate Drew Faridaj here for finishing second. It's awesome to have two of us on the podium here. All the guys over at Elliott Sadler Esports too. We've been working with them for this season. Donovan Strauss, Liam Brotherton, Brennan Kohler, all the guys over there. Really appreciate it. Put a lot of time into the setup. DM Software Development, an AI manager, the two sponsors here on my truck. You guys for putting on the broadcast, and I think that's about it.
Well, thank you so much for joining us here in the booth. Third place finisher tonight, the number 41 of Brian Mercurio. James, an awesome night here at Martinsville, and capping it off with a great overtime finish there.
Green, white checker finish to close things out at Martinsville in a race where you figured it might have gone 1, 2, 3 different ways, but at the end, instead of the long green flag racing, we get Evan Pacheco yellows at the end of this, a clinic on how to put on restarts, and Adam Gilliland just does what Adam Gilliland does in a lot of other series that he races in, and maintains the track position and ultimately rides the yellows, times his pits out perfectly, and now has a very realistic chance to make top 70 off of his win tonight.
It's amazing how much can change in one race, right? And I felt a little bit guilty about, talking early in this race about how Martinsville can get messy, right? We get through the first 75 laps of this thing like a breeze, and I'm thinking it was a little bit mean to Martinsville, right? Of course, second half of the race, it did get messy. It was a little bit crazy, but the guys up front weren't really in all of that, right? It was those drivers who were really on the losing end of that caution and where the pit cycled through back in traffic that were getting desperate. And it really allowed those mid-pack drivers, you heard Andrew Faridaj when I was talking with him, right? Says that probably shouldn't have deserved a P2 in this race. Truck was faster than 24th where they were, but maybe not P2, right? It's all about taking advantage. And I just love the fact that maybe aside from Darlington, the fact that we put the two hardest tracks in this opening round for these 8 weeks, the two hardest ones maybe were on the back half. Right, with this race, and then of course with Dover coming up in a couple of weeks' time. So it is allowing the cream to rise to the top. I'm not going to be shocked if we see some drivers go from top 70 to out and vice versa. I think it's going to make these final couple of weeks real interesting, and looking forward to being at the Monster Dubai Island so we can know those 70 drivers who are going to take the next step.
He makes a very good point now, doesn't he, Josh Lee, that if you thought that Darlington or Rockingham, or rather Martinsville, I'm getting all my old tracks mixed up here, but it's not like Dover is any easier. That is yet again another traditionally tough racetrack, and even Rockingham shows up on the calendar in round 2. So you're going to see some tests with these drivers over the course of the next few races.
And it's going to be difficult for the drivers that make that top 70. It's not top 70 and you're home free to the Contender Series in the winter. It's top 70, then you got to make top 20 from there. And we're starting round 2 at Knoxville. We're going to Watkins Glen, the only road course on the schedule. We're going to Bristol. We're going to Texas. We're going to Rockingham, like you mentioned. A lot of unique and difficult tracks coming up in the back half of this season. Round 1 is just the taste. Round 2 is the entire full course meal that we're going to see who is the top 20 in the Road to Pro qualifying iRacing series and who is going to be the main contenders heading into the Contender Series in the fall.
We've got to figure that out first, Jeff McConey, and a storyline no more obvious than we find out the top 70 2 Tuesday nights from tonight. 2 weeks time, we're going to Dover, and we're going to figure out who's in, who's out, whose season, and whose run to the 2022 Coke Series ends in the middle of June, and who gets to carry on and fight for a place in the Contender Series.
Absolutely, and I'll tell you what, if you're one of those guys on the border there at the top 70 and 2 Thursdays from now, it's going to be miserable while you wait for the points to update and the other splits to end. This is going to be a very crazy race coming up at Dover, because Dover in and of itself, it's a very difficult track. It is so easy to just go from loose in the center to the car just snaps around on exit, or you just plow into the wall with, if you are even half a second, a quarter of a second off on where you get onto the gas. It's so easy to destroy a truck at Dover, and then you wrap up a bunch of other trucks in it as well. So if you want a race that is just throwing stuff at the wall to see what sticks, Talladega, and I'm going to put Dover up there on the list, for it can be just as crazy, because you never know what can happen and what can go wrong at Dover. So it's going to be a very interesting race here. But if you're one of those guys that just had a really good night tonight, I would thank your lucky stars that you don't have to go into Dover in a do or die situation, because I can't think of a track that I would want to be at even less.
I think you have a very valid point in that the margin of error is so small at Dover, especially on corner exit. You could have a great truck, but all it takes is one corner exit where you sit on the throttle a little bit too long, or you get on the gas a little bit too early. You will spin yourself around. You will almost certainly hit the inside retaining wall, and your chances at a good finish may go smashed into the fence just like that, which is the last thing anybody near the cut line of the top 70 needs. But before we get to Dover International Speedway, plenty of racing to tell you about over the course of the next week. Tomorrow night, we're back in action with Fast Fridays, presented by McConey Setup Shop for Watkins Glen International. We'll go road course racing with the Next Gen machine, and if you want to get in on the action, follow the link in chat to go register. Anyone on iRacing is eligible to sign up if you head to McConeySetupShop.com/event-signups to get in on tomorrow's action, which you'll see at 9:30 p.m. Eastern here on the Podium Esports Twitch channel. Saturday afternoon, a doubleheader for you. Starts in the morning, actually. We'll take the USF 2000s at the New Hampshire Road Course. Interesting combo there as part of Formula Hybrid's wheel-to-wheel program. You'll see that at 11:30 a.m. Eastern on the iRacing Twitch channel, before you can come over to the Podium Esports Twitch channel at 1 p.m. Eastern for the Esports Drift Association. ESTA will tackle Megaspace. Sunday night, it's the MPI Cup Series, and the penultimate race of their season from Michigan will determine the final 4 that will advance into the championship race at Kansas on the Podium Esports Twitch channel at 9:15 p.m. Eastern Time. Before next Monday night, we return with Monday Night Racing presented by Napa Auto Parts as the Mazda MX-5 Miata Cup car heads to Lime Rock
Park, and you'll find that on the Podium 2 Twitch channel, as well as the Podium Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter pages. PCA Sim Racing rolls on with round 7 from Michelin Raceway Road, Atlanta. Yes, Road Atlanta. We'll say that one more time to make sure Drew Adamson squeals with glee. But we'll see that broadcast at 8 p.m. Eastern next Wednesday night at youtube.com/PCA Sim Racing before we are back to find out who makes top 70. It's the final race of the first round of the 2021 eNASCAR Road to Pro qualifying iRacing series from Dover International Speedway. You'll see our broadcast on June 17th, 2 weeks from tonight, 9 p.m. Eastern, right here on the Podium Esports Twitch channel. Time to say goodnight and goodbye from the paperclip just outside of Martinsville, Virginia in the Appalachian Mountains. And it is a short A for those who might not necessarily be so grammatically inclined. But we'll wave goodbye from the Appalachians and say thanks to everybody who helps make this broadcast possible. Gary Sexton, Cisco Scaramuza, John Theodore, Podium Esports, Tyler Hudson for organizing the Road to Pro qualifying iRacing series, our producer this evening, Ryan Bauer, our camera builder, Dougie Beard, my colleagues, Taylor Burris, Evan Pasoko, Josh Lee, and Jeff McConey. I am James Pike, the voice of Podium Esports. Thank you so much for watching our broadcast of the top split of the eNASCAR Road to Pro qualifying iRacing series, and we will see you 2 weeks from tonight for the finale of round 1 from iRacing's virtual Dover International Speedway.